Always put duct tape over your webcam. I don't care how safe you think you are, you can be a target. Anyone can be a target. There are people out there who can hack into your computer and turn on your camera without your knowledge. They can watch you anytime while you think you're alone. They aren't called hackers. They're called watchers. I am warning you about this because of my own encounter with a watcher. I was targeted when I entered an online chat room for a Reddit page. I thought it was harmless even though it was for horror enthusiasts. I started making some friends in the chat and revealed maybe a few too many details about myself. I described my physical characteristics: redhead, thick in the chest but slender in the waist, big eyes, sweet face, etc. I figured it would be helpful for people to put a face with a name, so I even sent them a picture. Maybe it was too sexy a picture. I don't really know. But I made a few friends and had fun talking with them. Then someone specific took a liking to me. He said his name was Seamus. I pronounced it C-Moose for the longest time until he corrected me. We would chat in the room for hours. Soon it moved to Skype. I never did video chat, only typing. I figured it was innocent. He said he was my age. We had a lot in common. We were both gamers, we both loved computers, and we both had cats. He was funny and sweet. I really liked chatting with him, but soon he started asking me weird questions. Like one day he asked me if I had a bunk bed. I said no. But he kept pushing me, telling me he had this feeling that I had a bunk bed. Truthfully, I did. But why would I share that? Finally I relented and told him. It was a weird moment, but I brushed it off. Next he started guessing my favorite bands. It was really strange. It was like he could read my mind. He even guessed my favorite movie, Shakespeare in Love. I didn't like our conversations so much anymore. He knew way too much about me. He started asking me if I knew how to dance. I said no, but he pushed me to try. He said, "No one is watching you. Just dance around right now in your bedroom." I told him I did, but I didn't. He told me he knew I didn't do it and he was disappointed in me. He said he wouldn't talk to me again if I kept lying to him. That's when I noticed the little blue light on my webcam was on. Thank God I never used the camera, so it was thrown haphazardly on the side of my desk. It didn't capture my face or body at all. Just the bed and the wall of posters behind it. I cringed a bit and then went to work. Watchers are idiots. They think they're immortal because of the cyberspace between them and their victims. They usually assume the person on the other end is just a dumb noob who has never hacked a site in her life. Some watchers are just young girls who think it's funny to see into people's bedrooms. But most watchers like to jerk off while their victims sit unknowingly. I typed to him, "You really want me to dance for you?" He typed back instantly, "Yes. Yes." The thing about watchers is that they never do anything beyond watching. They are fucking cowards. They get their jollies and then move on. But us visitors, we do more than watch. So I flipped on my view of his webcam. Of course I'm a much better hacker than him, so his light never turned on. Seamus was an older man sitting in a boring room. Probably his study. He had his dick out in his hands and was eagerly waiting for me to come into view of the camera. He had been waiting almost 2 months for just one glimpse of me. Pretty stupid if you ask me, so I gave him what he asked for. On his screen he saw the back of a girl's head rise into vision. He leaned closer, almost drooling. Then I turned the body to face him. The girl's decomposed face filled his screen. She'd been dead for months, so her face was a fleshy pit of maggots and half-eaten eyes. Seamus, real name Ron, screamed and nearly squeezed his dick off. I laughed. Bet he wasn't expecting the cute little redhead to actually be an adult woman with a propensity for violence. Then I turned the camera to my face. I wore my usual black ski mask. Ron tried desperately to turn off the feed, but I had locked it. He was stuck. I laid the body of the dead girl over my lap. I pushed on one of her cheeks until it sank deep into the skull. Ron vomited but did not leave the room. I then wrote him 2 little love notes. Don't bother looking for him. I'm typing this from his computer right now, so as you can see, you should always put duct tape over your camera. That way you don't get those disgusting watchers seeing into your life without permission. But the best part of the duct tape? It provides a challenge to us visitors. It makes it much harder to find you, but we always do.
I regret rejecting him. So I have a best friend who we'll call Jay, who's also my schoolmate, classmate, and we live in the same residential area. A little description on Jay. He's tall, handsome, athletic, fit, smart, funny and sweet. He even has good hair and the most beautiful eyes. Jay and I had been friends from kindergarten up till high school. When we were in primary school he confessed many times, but I only considered him a friend. I never saw him to be as handsome and amazing as everyone else did, because I saw him almost all the time of my life. About a month and a half ago, Jay once again confessed to me. This time he did it more maturely and more in a sweet way that I actually felt butterflies in my stomach. But I wasn't sure I felt the same. His confession did really make me think of it, but I really valued our friendship more, and I didn't think I felt anything for Jay. So once again I rejected him in a way I regret to this day. I laughed and said, "So I'm still your little obsession. Grow up and move on already, Jay." His face after I said that made me regret my words. He didn't laugh like I did. It seemed like he was fighting back tears. I honestly didn't think he was being 100% serious, because he would always say how he will confess 100 times a week to wait for me to say yes. Jay just walked away and left. He didn't come to school the next day. He didn't come outside when I went to call him to walk together to school. He ignored my calls and texts, and when he did see them, he never responded. At first I was angry at him. Why was he taking rejection so seriously? I already rejected him enough times for him to get used to it. That's what I thought then. But the more I didn't get the notification of his text, his random FaceTimes, the goofy TikToks he'd send me, the more I didn't get to see his name pop up on my notifications. I felt bad. I had made so many tries to text him when I finally sent him an apology of a paragraph, but it was then I found out. He blocked me. He came back to school after missing 2.5 weeks out. Those 2.5 weeks I thought of him always. Our desks were together, so I'd zone out while staring at his desk. One of my friends even told me I might have fallen for you, but I denied it. I denied it until I saw him when he came back. Jay looked like a whole different person. He had dyed his blonde hair jet black and had gotten an amazing haircut. His aura completely changed as soon as he entered the class. Everyone looked at him, and I did too. He sat down at his desk and didn't even turn to look at me. Everyone came and showered him with compliments about his good haircut, and he suddenly had the most charming smile as he thanked everyone. Well, everyone but me. I turned to him with a happy smile and said, "Black hair really suits you well. You look so handsome." But he ignored me and continued to speak to this other guy who even stopped talking so Jay would react my comment, but nothing. He ignored me the whole morning, and when our homeroom teacher came he asked to switch seats but was denied. He ignored me and hang out with the people he knew I didn't like. He always walk away when I tried to talk to him. I had actually come to accept that I liked him back. I even asked my friends and my sister and even my mom of feeling certain ways after he left. Men, I liked him, and my mom said, maybe he just needed to leave for you to realize how much you care for him. And my friends and sisters said the same. I decided to go and tell him the day after he returned. I didn't get the chance in the morning because he went to his new friends, and when I tried to talk to him he went away. I felt so bad that I went crying in the girls' bathroom. I regretted it. I regretted it so much. I wished I had just accepted his feelings then and tried to see if I'd fall for him with time. I shouldn't have waited this long. He ignored me completely and acted like we were never even friends for the rest of the days that followed. I had enough of it though. Since he had me blocked everywhere, I took my sister's phone and sent him a long message confessing my feelings, apologizing and asking him if we could be friends again and telling him how much I missed him. I begged him to talk to me and really hoped he would see it. Now I'm waiting for his reply. I feel so distressed I want to cry. I feel anxious. I feel like he'll make fun of me, or reject me even worse, but I'm ready for any response as long as he talks to me and reads my message. I don't care if he hates me now. I know I made him angry and I want to fix it. I feel sorry for how mean I rejected him too.
I told my boyfriend it was his fault that his son is in critical condition. My grandma died on April 26th. She was my best friend. She is the first real loss I've experienced. I am shattered about it. On April 29th, my boyfriend's son was in a major car wreck. He and his friend were intoxicated and his friend got behind the wheel and drove. Thankfully they hurt nobody but themselves, but his son's best friend died and his son was in critical condition. As any parent can imagine, my boyfriend was very stressed about it. In the middle of my grieving, I am doing all I can to be there for my boyfriend. I spent the first 2 days at the hospital, being supportive of my boyfriend. I went home on the third day to take care of our house. Do laundry. Clean up. Take care of our dogs. So my boyfriend didn't have to worry about it. I came back to the hospital to deliver dinner to my boyfriend. I wasn't going to stay cause I still had to do laundry before going to work the following day. I dropped off dinner and my boyfriend says, "Oh, you didn't have to bring dinner." I already ate. I was slightly annoyed because I just wasted gas and wasn't planning on staying. Thoughtlessly, I said, "Well, I wouldn't have come if I had known." I realized my mistake immediately and apologized, but my boyfriend yelled at me in front of his entire family to leave and called me a dumb jerk. I left without argument because I knew it was wrong of me to say that. So today, I am home finishing laundry, etc., and my boyfriend comes home to take a shower. We get into a huge argument because I couldn't stand how he was talking to me. My grandma just died, and instead of me grieving, I am trying to put that to the side and be selfless and split time at the hospital and taking care of things at home so my boyfriend didn't have to worry when he gets to leave the hospital. Apparently, it wasn't good enough for my boyfriend. He insulted me and called me a dumb fat jerk. Told me I'm selfish. Told me nobody cares about your grandma or your feelings. Nobody cares that she died. Obviously, you're alone because you don't have a support system. Where are all your friends? To add, I moved from Alabama to Colorado and have struggled with keeping friends. The majority of my support system are in Alabama. It's a point of pain for me. Aside from that, but I struggle with my weight due to medical issues. I'm really not that big. I could lose 40 pounds and be back to my expected BMI. At this point I saw red and shouted, "You raised your son to think drinking and driving was okay, and now his best friend unalived himself and put your son in critical condition. Your dad of the year, I know that was messed up, but I can't take it back." I'm just so fed up with the insults. I'm fed up with how he has acted since she died, before his son got in a wreck, and I'm sick of him acting like my grieving was no big deal. Neither of our pains is comparable or invalid. Aside from that, but he is acting like I'm the bad guy for not staying at the hospital 24/7 like him. I was trying to do normal adult things so he didn't have to. When I would rather lay in bed for eternity. I'm the jerk, but I don't care. I'm fed up with my pain and sadness being ignored. My rude coworker keeps naming our transgender colleague out of respect for his mother, so we got her fired. I have managed John, a transgender man, for about 2 years. John does not keep his transgender status a secret, but he also doesn't go out of his way to tell people, so some people know and some don't. Lizzie recently transferred to a department that works closely with ours. She previously did not know that John was trans, but now that she's interacting with him much more often, she's found out. At first, she didn't seem to have an issue with it, but then she discovered some articles he'd published while still going by Sally, and now she insists on calling him Sally. She claims that she has no problem with trans people, but that she feels it's important to call John by the name he was given at birth out of respect for his mother. John and I have both asked her to stop, but she refuses. On John's request, I have also gone to her manager, But Lizzie has a very domineering personality and her manager avoids confrontation, so I don't think he said anything to her. Not only is Lizzie's insistence on dead-naming John offensive, it is confusing because many people don't understand who she's talking about when she mentions Sally. I've tried casually correcting her at the moment, as if I thought she was making a mistake, and John has outright refused to answer to the name Sally, but she keeps saying that it's disrespectful to his mother to use a name she didn't choose for him. John complained to HR, but they said that because she was not explicitly harassing him for being trans, they couldn't do anything. John has now started exclusively calling Lizzie Elizabeth. There is another Elizabeth in the office, and if there's any confusion over which Elizabeth he's talking about, John uses Lizzie's maiden name, rather than her married name. Lizzie hates this and has complained to him, me, and half the office, but he says that it's out of respect for her mother. Honestly, I think this is hilarious, but I feel that as a manager, I shouldn't encourage John to deliberately antagonize Lizzie, even though she started it. However, it does seem extremely unfair to tell John that not only does he have to put up with Lizzie using his dead name, he has to use her preferred name. I realized that I needed to talk to John about what he wanted to do. I apologized to him for not being proactive enough with this problem, and for underestimating just how offensive Lizzie's actions were, reiterated that I was on his side, told him that I was setting up a meeting with Lizzie and her manager for later that day, and asked what he wanted to do and what he wanted me to do. He admitted that although he was joking about it, he was actually really upset by Lizzie constantly dead-naming him, so in addition to needing her to stop, he would rather not work with her anymore, or at least work with her as little as possible. I also told him that I was willing to make a big stink about both Lizzie's actions, and HR's inaction to my boss and the higher-ups in HR, but that I wanted to make sure he was comfortable with being explicitly identified as being transgender, and experiencing transphobic harassment. He said he was worried about escalating the issue himself, because he didn't want to come off as pushy or overly sensitive, but that he did want me to do it. I took Allison's advice with Lizzie's boss, and just checked his and Lizzie's Outlook calendars to find a time when they were both free and set up a meeting, figuring that his dislike of confrontation meant that he would go along with it. I said that Lizzie's offensive behavior towards John had gone on way too long, and that she needed to immediately stop calling him any name other than John. She tried to say that she had no problem with transgender people and that it was a matter of respect for his mother, but I interrupted her and said that John's mother and her feelings were irrelevant, and that she was being deeply disrespectful to John, who is actually her coworker and thus actually needed her respect. I also said that it didn't matter how she felt about trans people or if she didn't intend to be transphobic. Purposely calling John by his dead name was a transphobic action and it needed to stop, and that until I could trust her to treat him with respect, she was not to attend any of our team meetings, and any workflow that would normally pass between her and John would go through me first, and I would pass on the information. Her boss spoke for the first time then and said that sounded like it might make us miss deadlines on some of our tighter turnarounds, which I agreed was true, but given that Lizzie refused to use John's name, I felt I had an ethical duty to prevent her from speaking to him at all, not to mention that allowing her to continue harassing him would open us up to litigation. I tried to say this all as matter-of-factly as possible, so it would be clear that I didn't care how Lizzie actually felt about mothers or trans people, and that I wasn't asking for suggestions on what should be done. After that meeting, I emailed my team and explained that due to Lizzie's outrageous and offensive behavior, I was changing our procedures so that she and John would no longer have direct contact, and that they should expect some delays in communication between her and our team. I also apologized for having allowed her to behave in such a blatantly transphobic fashion for close to a month, which should never have been tolerated at all, and explained that I had told her that she had to stop immediately, so if she referred to John as Sally again, they should let me know, either by forwarding me an email if it was in writing or by documenting the incident, if it were over the phone or video chat, and should also feel free to tell her that she was being offensive and needed to stop. This is when things get satisfying. My boss was included in the email to my team, and he called me about half an hour later asking about it. I hadn't told him much about the Lizzie situation, because he has very little patience for people complaining about their interpersonal conflicts to their boss, and while this is a lot more significant than an interpersonal conflict, I thought he wouldn't want to hear about it anyway, especially since he doesn't have much contact with my team in normal times, and has had even less while we've been virtual. Once I explained what had been happening, he said that was the most ridiculous thing he'd ever heard, and set up a meeting for the two of us with the head of HR for the next day. The head of HR agreed that this was outrageous and that HR should never have tolerated it. A week later, Lizzie got fired. Then the HR rep who had said this wasn't explicitly transphobic got fired about a week and a half later. Lizzie's boss had to go through some pretty extensive management training, and there's talk that he may transfer into a position without any direct reports. The entire HR department did training on LGBT issues and what is now required of them because of Bostick v. Clayton County. The entire company got an anonymous survey asking if we had ever been harassed, or felt that we were the victim of discrimination in the workplace, and the head of HR personally apologized to John for the first HR representative mishandling of the case, and encouraged him to come to her if he ever felt harassed based on his gender identity.
My intimacy-obsessed ex thinks that I'm pregnant with his baby. I haven't spoken to him in years. My 33 ex, 33, and I have been together since we were kids. We started out as friends, then in high school we started dating. We eventually got married and was trying to have kids. But it was unsuccessful. I had 4 miscarriages within 2 years we were trying. Mentally and emotionally, I was broken. Then I came to know that he has been cheating on me. He claims that if I was able to have kids, he wouldn't have wanted to seek someone else. He wanted to divorce me. Said he wanted kids and knows I cannot have them. I begged and pleaded but nothing. To add more salt onto my wound, while we were doing the divorce proceedings, he got his affair partner pregnant. We were both 29 when that happened. After the divorce I had no contact with my ex or any of our mutual friend. The only link I had was my mom. My ex's mom and my mom were friends. But I told my mom to stop bringing his news to me. It's been a long time. I have moved on and met my fiancé, 29. We recently got to know that I am pregnant. Honestly, I wasn't having much of a hope since all my pregnancies has been a failure. My fiancé has been supportive of me. I feel like I am finally happy. So, few days ago I went to my high school reunion. My ex approached me. He was kind of shocked to see me visibly pregnant. All my pregnancies didn't last for more than 2 months. He asked me how far along. I am 6 months pregnant. He just said congratulations and went away. Later I got a call from my mom asking why I haven't told my ex about my pregnancy. He was sad. He thought it could be his. I told her there is no reason for him to know that. She argued that besides being husband and wife we were friends too. I should have let him know. I don't know, my sister also thinks I probably should have told him since we're so close-knit. He should have known anyways because my mom still talks to my ex's mom. My intimacy-obsessed ex thinks that I'm pregnant with his baby. My ex called me from his cousin's phone. Maybe my mother gave him my phone number. He requested to see me. I refused. I don't want to interact with him in any way. He insisted again that this was the last time. He simply wants to apologize and feels that I deserve more than a simple text apology. I only consented to one stipulation. That is, he agreed that I could bring my fiancé. He basically just apologized profusely for hurting me. He expressed that he was angry when we were trying and failing and he secretly blamed me for the miscarriages. He started to feel resentment towards me for not giving him a child. That hate he had towards me made him cheat. He knows this is not an excuse. He knows it was him who effed up majorly. He always felt guilty and ashamed of how he treated me. When his son was born his head was clear for the first time. He said he started to realize the problem was him and not me. Because his now wife almost miscarried and luckily the child survived but still there was many health complications. After that he and his wife tried but they failed. In these 4 years they had 6 miscarriages. He feels like it was him. He has gotten a vasectomy because he was just frustrated. He almost repeated the same pattern but this time he went to therapy. He also said seeing me pregnant on my reunion made him realize the life we could have had if he wasn't such a jerk. He thinks that this means he should have a right to my child. He was angry and sad seeing me because he always thought we were soulmates. So that meant he had a right to the child. But he effed up. I didn't say much but wished him well. We were not perfect for each other and I am glad he got what he wanted and I got what I wanted. Maybe we were better off as apart than we were together. He congratulated me for the last time before leaving. Also after that I strictly told my mom to stop contacting him. It is weird that she is still trying for us to be together. I never stopped her from being friends with my ex's mom but she should stop bringing her up whenever me or my husband or my stepson is around. She will be on information diet. On another sad news, my sister is dating my ex's brother. Looks like I have to go low contact for a while. And we are eloping because knowing my mom, she will try to invite my ex and his family too. I don't want that kind of drama in my life.
I basically live alone, so I live at home with my dad but he's never here and I pretend to everyone that it's a cool thing because I always have the house to myself but in reality it's really lonely. I don't want to tell my friends or my boyfriend because I feel like they just wouldn't understand because they all live in busy houses and would love some time to themselves. I do like it sometimes but late at night the house is real quiet. I get quite scared at noises because I don't know what I would do if something bad was to happen and I was on my own. My dad's not the best and we don't always get along but I just wish he'd be here more.
Teachers, what was your worst meltdown? What happened? Our 10th grade math teacher had a mental breakdown in her last class period. Apparently that class was pretty notorious for being filled with some asshole group of guys that didn't like authority and were pretty unintelligent. They were also known as bullies. The school gossip the next day was that she had a breakdown after the boys found out she had a miscarriage a few weeks back and thus that was the reason she was absent for a whole week. Then the bullies proceeded to gleefully tell her that she killed her baby and that God was punishing her for being such a shitty person, etc. They definitely went too far and she broke down sobbing and screaming that they were the most horrible people she had ever met and that there was no hope for them. Ran out of class and the old math bitches in the math meeting room came to watch her class for the last 15 minutes of class and gave the entire class reams of homework as punishment for letting these assholes bully a young woman who recently lost her baby through no fault of her own. That was when I lost faith in most of humanity and the story still haunts me to this day that it even happened. She came back to teaching after a month away to try and heal again but those 3 boys in her class were royally reamed out by their parents/admin/their peers and weren't any trouble in her class anymore for the rest of the year. It must have sucked that she had to teach and be in close proximity to her tormentors for the rest of the year. I could not have done that. I salute any teacher for their often thankless and hard work in our school systems. Am I the a-hole for hiring a side piece to ruin my brother's proposal? I'm 35 years old and have a younger brother who's 29. My brother loves being the center of attention at all special events. It could be a birthday, baby shower, or engagement party. Whatever it is, my brother needs to be in the center of it all. Because of this I have a strained relationship with him. Unfortunately, my brother met and fell in love with some woman. This woman is just as bad as my brother. She even announced her pregnancy at my older sister's baby shower. When I proposed to my wife, I just wanted to elope but she really wanted her family to be there so I invited my family out of obligation. While out, My best man noticed a receipt from a jewelry store slipped out of my brother's pocket. My best man confronted my brother about this, which led to an argument. My best man told me everything, and I told my brother that he was no longer going to be a groomsman because I knew he was going to propose at my wedding. My brother cried to our parents, which led to a blowout. In my parents' eyes, since my brother never admitted that he was going to propose to his girlfriend at my wedding, I was unfairly judging him. I refused and brought up my brother's past behavior. My parents got him to agree to not try anything at my wedding. I warned him that if, as a guest, he'd try anything, I would make him regret it. Fast forward to the wedding, and surprise, surprise, my brother walked over to his girlfriend and proposed to her during my wife's father-daughter dance, and did it in a way so that everyone would notice. So my best man and I hired a woman to pretend to be my brother's side piece. The woman claimed she was pregnant with my brother's baby right in front of my brother's girlfriend. He denied it, but when the woman called his phone, it didn't look good. His girlfriend threw the ring at my brother and left in tears. When my brother saw the smile on my face, he knew it was me who did it. After my honeymoon, I didn't respond to a single text or call from him or my parents. His girlfriend broke up with him and is denying him the right to see their child.
I gifted my twins differently. Was I wrong to do so? So recently, my son and daughter, who are 18-year-old twins, just celebrated their birthdays, and I got them gifts accordingly. However, my daughter got upset about the gift she received compared to her brother's, and now she won't talk to me. Here's the deal: I bought him a car for my son's birthday. It's a used one, nothing fancy, but it's a reliable vehicle to get him around. On the other hand, for my daughter's birthday, I gifted her a $300 Visa gift card. Now, I understand that, on the surface, this might seem unfair, but hear me out. My son has shown a strong interest in cars for years, and he's been saving up for one. He's responsible and has a part-time job, so it was an excellent time to help him get one. He was thrilled, and we even went car shopping together. On the other hand, my daughter never expressed any particular interest in anything specific. She's more into shopping and fashion, so a Visa gift card would allow her to choose whatever she wants. Plus, she's been asking for extra money lately to buy clothes and makeup. However, when she opened her gift, she got visibly upset and called it unfair. She said it wasn't fair that her brother got a car and she only got a gift card, and I was showing favoritism. I tried explaining my reasoning, but she wouldn't listen and stormed off. She hasn't talked to me since. I did what was best for them based on their interests and needs, but now I wonder if I was wrong. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Many people are saying I'm sexist and showing favoritism. I want to make clear that I'm not a sexist, and I'm not intentionally trying to show favoritism. Although the value of their gifts may differ, I did the best I could to find an estate I thought they both enjoyed based on their interests. My son was interested in cars, and my daughter was interested in money, so that's what they got. I thought $300 was a good portion, and I didn't believe it had to be the same amount of money I was putting into the purchase of my son's car, as strictly handing out $10K to someone to spend on whatever they want is different from spending it on something that's needed. Edit 2, I might let my daughter share a car with her mother, as my wife doesn't drive or go anywhere that much. So when she isn't using it, my daughter can drive her car for now.
What's the single best piece of advice you've ever heard? To know who your true friends are, look for the ones who say good things behind your back and bad things to your face. The grass isn't greener on the other side, it's greener where you water it. Don't spend life daydreaming about what could be in a different place or circumstance. Instead, invest your energy in what is right in front of you and see how it can be cultivated into something beautiful. A few months back, someone posted how his boss always seemed totally at peace in a high-stress environment. Totally chill, no matter how messed up things got. When he asked him about it, the boss said someday, someone you love will die, and everything else will seem totally irrelevant. Totally morbid way of saying life is too short to be mad/sad/stressed all the time, but it gets to the point and it's stuck in my head. Don't worry about controlling your emotions. Control your actions. This was from my geometry instructor when I was a sophomore in high school. He was the kind of guy who spent 80% of class time discussing mathematics, and 20% talking about life. He was an excellent teacher, and one hell of a human being. The goal, I think, of parents in the area where I grew up was a kind of steely-eyed stoicism. Conceal your anger, ignore your lust, show no fear, show no weakness, be strong, strong, strong. Being awash in hormones, I could do none of those things, and I was beating myself up constantly. I think most kids in school were under the same pressure. His advice hit me right between the eyes. The experience of emotions is outside our control, but our response to them is not. Don't be ashamed of a feeling, but be ashamed if you act like an ass because of the feeling. That idea changed everything for me. I passed his insight on to my kids, and I still apply it to my own life decades later.
My husband and I have 6 children together. He got me nothing and did nothing for Mother's Day. Again. I cooked dinner for the kids and calmly walked out. Nobody even noticed. I'm sitting in the parking lot of Mellow Mushroom crying and waiting for my large pizza with vegan cheese, and I don't know what I'll do after that. He's a great dad and shows us all how much he loves us every day by working hard and going out of his way to do things for us. I don't know why birthdays, Mother's Days, and holidays are so hard for him, but it really bothers me that he never does anything. No cards, no gifts. I don't want this to bother me, but it does. I've talked myself out of being upset over it for 15 years and I guess I couldn't do it a 16th.
Karen chased me out of Walmart for this. I, 21, and my boyfriend, 22, are moving into a new apartment. Due to this, We have made it a habit to go to a new store every day, and today we chose to go to Walmart. That's mistake number one. We live in a suburban area where there are a lot of soccer moms who just love to complain about anything you do. This isn't exactly a good place for me and my boyfriend, who can be considered a bit wild. They're the type of wild that they do a civilian's arrest for fun. Now on to the story. My boyfriend and I were in the bedding section looking for some new covers. Thinking about our new bed, we may have gotten a little too into the mood. However, since we were in public, we couldn't touch each other, right? Well, technically, we didn't touch each other. We used a vibrator called Flamingo found on the website loverspulse.com. All we had to do was have the toy in me already, and I could be played with at any moment. Since we were getting excited, my boyfriend decided to act on it, but quietly. He pulled out the Flamingo app on his phone and began making swirling motions on his screen. I was in a world of delight and it was obvious on my face. He had to shush me so that I wouldn't make any noise in the middle of Walmart aisle. He never needed to even touch me and I was already shaking. In a moment of weakness, I moaned out loud and that's when chaos erupted. A woman passing by heard me moan and immediately looked straight at us. Since I was struggling holding in my excitement, she thought something fishy was going on. She asked us what was wrong and I ignored her at first. My boyfriend kept doing what he was doing and I just looked straight at the shelves, but when she asked again, I accidentally let out another moan right as I turned to her. She began yelling at us, telling us that we were creeps and to get away from this place. She went on a rant about how there are children around us and we deserve to get arrested. I started arguing with her saying that we weren't doing anything and she's delusional. She didn't believe me and pulled out her phone to call the cops, but we didn't even want to be there for the cops to come. My boyfriend and I grabbed each other's hands and began to speed walk away from her. Karen wouldn't let up though and started following us around the store. I got so creeped out that I began to run away from her to the exit, and this crazy lady began running too. I was so scared. For being so old she ran like a cheetah. When we left Walmart, she finally stopped and smirked to herself. I'm thinking of moving away. My penny-pinching boss forced me to give my entire bonus away to charity. The charity wasn't even real. My boss forced me to give away my hard-earned money, so I sabotaged her bonus. Every year the company I worked for had a huge fundraising campaign. They solicit from all employees to voluntarily contribute towards charities directly from their paycheck. You are encouraged and very heavily pressured to donate to pre-selected charities of their choice. There were lots of email reminders and signage all over company walls, including ploys of having your name entered for prize drawings, but prizes were always won by company executives and leadership. The company wanted 100% participation from all departments. It was supposed to be anonymous, but they kept a list of names of those who haven't yet contributed. Those on that list would be approached by the administrator and pressured to participate. My usually stoic and stern boss would become giddy about the charity campaign. One year I was struggling hard, so I wasn't going to contribute. I was more broke than the tooth fairy in a house full of addicts. But here comes my boss into the office squealing we are almost to 100% participation. She was eyeballing me the whole time, trying to subtly make her way to me. She gets to my desk. Have you made your contribution yet? Without thinking I told her I was still considering which charity. She pulled a chair over to my desk and opened up the charity website and literally walked me through entering my contribution. So as a good little young, naive worker I did as I was being basically forced to do and contributed. I made our department reach 100% participation. The next year I purposely waited until the last second to make my contribution to see if I got the same one-on-one chat with my boss. Sure enough, she came with the same sob story she has memorized and would baby talk me through making my contribution while she watched. I soon became her target to get rid of. She was out for my job, so she separated me from people I got along well with, including my direct supervisor, and made me report directly to her. I knew I had to get out of there quickly or I'd lose my job. So instead of looking for new work, I started looking for ways to sabotage my boss. I hit absolute gold. While searching through her desk, I found the charity documents. On these documents it showed where the money was going. It was going directly into her pocket. That's why she wanted 100% participation. You can bet your sweet rear ends I reported her scheme to the CEO. A criminal investigation is ongoing, but I say it's safe to presume she will be spending whatever money she has left on the jail commissary. What's the grossest thing your partner does but you accept? 1. Biting my toenails. Not her toenails but mine. I don't like it, but it doesn't do any harm to me. Then she'll chew on them for hours. 2. Clean his butt in the sink after a poop. Mind you, I bought a bidet attachment that he just needs to get the plumber to connect. 3. He sometimes eats while in the bathroom taking a poop. He'll also try to feed me snacks in the bathroom, as if he's made cookies and saw me walk past to go pee. 4. His dog sleeps in bed with him. The dog regularly pisses in said bed. 5. Nearly dies from choking on stringy cheese every time she eats a mozzarella stick. She never learns. 6. He picks his teeth with the point of a sharp knife. It's not particularly gross, but the thought of metal against teeth makes me cringe so hard, I can't stand it. 7. To take his medication in pill form, he chews up a big piece of food, spits it out in a ball, shoves his medication in it, throws the ball of food back in his mouth, and swallows it whole. 8. She licks her vibrator before using it, having not washed it in over a year. 9. My ex never cleaned her room and she had guinea pigs and hadn't cleaned their cages on a regular basis. It was attracting flies while she just sat there on TikTok. I had cleaned her room on my third visit to her because I couldn't stand it and had to take the guinea pig cage outside and scrape the bottom, wipe it, and let it soak for over an hour. 10. Multiple times I saw my ex pick a booger and flick it off into his room. Also, about 3 months after we broke up I was cleaning under my bed and found different pieces of gum stuck to the bottom of my bed frame. 11. My ex would masturbate in his bathroom and comb directly on a specific bathroom wall and then not clean it up. There were literal yellow drip stains all over the wall and I didn't know what they were until until I had sat against them multiple times. 12. Picks at dandruff while relaxing on the couch. They are huge chunks. Then when he gets up he gives the furniture a hearty sweep with his hand. But you know that just moves them to the carpet. 13. Rub my ball bag then sniff her fingers. Update 2. I cut my parents off because I found out they have an open marriage. I, alongside my fiancé, met with my parents at my dorm. They flew over, and they told me they wanted to be at the wedding. I asked my fiancé to give us a moment, and then I said no to them coming. After that, I read to them what I wrote to you guys, except in first person. I told them all of it and they just looked at me in disgust. They both said that this was a huge waste of their time, and that they didn't deserve any of this. After a verbal fight, my father said something that just broke me. He said, you know, I never wanted you. I never wanted to be a father. I wonder sometimes what my life would be if we had just aborted you then. I couldn't say anything, I just went paralyzed as they berated me. I felt 16 all over again. That's when my fiancée came back to the room and started yelling back. She held her ground and told them to get out. After they left I started hyperventilating again. I wanted to cry but I couldn't feel my face or my limbs. My fiancée just held me in her arms and hugged me. I just cried for like an hour on her shoulder. We talked afterwards and, all I know is that I am marrying the most wonderful woman in the world. One thing she said to me that I will never forget was, you know, the only good decision they ever made was having you. How else was I going to meet my soulmate? I love her so much. As for the therapy, I am working with my university and my plan will be able to foot the bill. I am making progress although it has been difficult to open up about this all after so long. I am learning more about myself and all of this every day, recovering memories that I had pushed so deep that it's sometimes difficult for me to remember it all. Lastly, the wedding. So the wedding is still going forward and I have never been more sure of something in my entire life. We may push it back a few months, just due to financial issues and venue issues. She is my whole world and I want to build a family with her. I am happier than I have ever been.
I pretend to be asleep when my fiancé gets up for work. I, 25, have been with my fiancé Jake, 27, for about 4 years now, and there's this morning ritual he has that I've never brought up to him. We moved in together a couple years ago, and since then, I've noticed the sweet routine he thinks I'm completely oblivious to. Jake has always been an early riser, needing to be at work before the sun is fully up. I, on the other hand, have the luxury of a few more hours in bed due to my work schedule. Every morning, without fail, I'm awakened by the sound of his alarm, but I keep my eyes shut, faking that I'm in a deep sleep. As he goes about his morning routine, I listen to the familiar sounds, the shower running, the clink of his belt, the rustle of his shirt, but the part I secretly wait for is what comes next. Once he's all set, Jake tiptoes back into our room. He carefully lowers himself, ensuring he's level with my face, and gently places a kiss on my forehead. Love you, he'd whisper, thinking I'm still lost in my dreams. But the real cherry on top? As he sneaks out of the room, he lets out this soft, childlike giggle, as if he's just pulled off a grand heist without waking me up. It's this innocent joy that makes me so happy every morning. I've never mentioned this to him. A part of me worries that if I do, the ritual might change or stop altogether. But every day, it's a beautiful reminder of the playful and tender love we share. I just felt the need to share this little secret of ours with someone. Mother-in-law kicks our dog, so we kick her out. Today my mother-in-law visited, and as usual, she brought up the topic of having kids. It's been 8 years since my husband and I got married, but we've decided not to have children. It's hard for mother-in-law to understand our choice. She thinks our dog is somehow to blame for it. She even says things like, if you didn't have the dog, you could have kids safely, or you care so much about an animal but not about having your own child. Our German Shepherd is 14 years old now, and we love him. He's part of our family. It's tough to see him getting old, but he's still doing well for his age. The vet says he's fine if he eats, drinks, and walks. This time, we asked mother-in-law to stop talking about kids, and she got upset. As she was leaving, she kicked our dog in the hallway, calling him a dirty mutt and complaining about him being slow. I was shocked and asked her why she would do that. Mother-in-law said she didn't have time to wait for him, but he's slow because he's old. I told her he lives here, and she has no right to treat him that way. The dog has nothing to do with our decision not to have kids. My husband heard the commotion and was furious when he learned what happened. He supported me and told my mother-in-law to leave and never come back, saying she's a danger to our dog. He didn't even let her get dressed, just threw her stuff outside and blocked her from contacting us. We took the dog to the vet to make sure he's okay, and thankfully, he is. We are both serious about cutting off contact with mother-in-law after this incident. We'll never understand being cruel to animals.
I just saw a video of my best friend's fiancé calling my wife a slur. I'm supposed to be his best man at their wedding next week. I'll keep this short, but I, 28, am married to a black woman. I love her so much and no one I've ever met has had a problem with her or our relationship. My best friend since childhood, also 28, is getting married next Saturday to his fiancée Carly, 27. She's always been really nice and both me and my wife like her. I got a message from one of Carly's bridesmaids on Instagram a few minutes ago with a video of Carly calling my wife the N-word. I'm just shocked right now and don't know what to think. I never would have expected her to say something like that, and she's never had a problem with my wife, at least not to my knowledge. I'm supposed to be the best man at their wedding, but I'm not sure if I want to stand there and watch my best friend marry a woman who said something like that about my wife. I haven't brought it up to my wife or best friend yet, but I'm going to have to sooner than later. I'm also starting to wonder if my best friend knows about her racism and feelings towards my wife. I'm just lost right now and don't know where to go from here. How am I even supposed to bring this up to my friend? And how do I tell my wife without hurting her? I just really don't know what to do. What's the most messed up thing someone has confessed to you in confidence? We knew that my grandpa was born in 1922, so he would have been of age for the war, but my grandpa always insisted he never participated and tried to hush up our questions. Skip to him being pretty intoxicated one night when we went to visit my grandparents. My grandpa told me to go into the other room with him and my parents were already going to bed and everything. I'm in grandpa's room and he pulls out a small chest and opens it, showing me a bunch of photos and old World War II Army gear, including his old helmet. I was pretty astonished as he never talked about that time. Out of nowhere he asked for my confidence and I said of course, safe with me. He starts telling me that he landed on Omaha Beach on D-Day as part of the 1st Infantry Division or the Big Red One. He started telling me the things that he saw and I was terrified. Apparently, when he came off the landing craft, the door jammed and only went about halfway down, exposing the soldiers inside without letting them out. Some guys panicked and tried to go over the side, but were shot down. As the crew member was trying to fix the door, machine guns turned on the exposed landing craft and pretty much wiped out everyone on board. My grandpa went up and over the side with 2 pals of his, and successfully made it into the surf without being hit. At this point he started crying and he asked me if I knew what artillery does when it hits, and I said I guess. Him and his friends made it up the beach miraculously and onto a small bluff to take cover, but a shell hit about 10 meters away from them. It almost knocked my grandpa out, but when he started to recover from the shock, he realized that both his friends had been hit. He said that one of them was still alive, but had been divided in 2 from the legs and was squirming and slowly fading. The other friend, his best friend whom enlisted with my grandpa, had his face taken off and tried to speak, but only made inhuman and awful sounds before he passed several minutes later. My grandpa was pinned still trying to recover from the shock and machine gun fire was heavy, so he couldn't go out to comfort or try to help his friends, so he had to sit there and watch them pass away. My grandpa started to cry uncontrollably and I just hugged him. I was absolutely terrified about what he had been through. I was only 12 to 13 at the time, but I understood why he didn't tell anyone. When he calmed down a bit, he told me never to tell anyone because that was his burden to bear. He was awfully out of it, but I think he truly meant that, so I haven't told anyone since. Would I be the asshole, would I be the a-hole, if I chose to stay in my room instead of spending time with my dad and his partner? Hello, I'm a 15-year-old girl seeking advice. Last week, when my dad's partner came over for dinner, I moved my food around on my plate to prevent it from touching. Surprisingly, my dad got mad at me for this. It had never been an issue before, so I brushed it off. However, things escalated during the meal when my dad's partner started making jokes about my eating habits and my dislike for my food touching each other. This had never been a problem before either. He made derogatory comments, even going so far as to suggest that I should be sent to a retard home if I couldn't eat like a normal person. His partner joined in, making remarks about my inability to find a boyfriend if I couldn't eat properly. Their words hurt, but I chose not to respond. Throughout the evening, they continued to laugh at me and make similar jokes, which led me to spend the rest of the night in a separate room. These jokes included remarks about my need to grow up, stop being a baby, get over myself, just do it, and being labeled a weirdo. Afterwards, I approached my dad and expressed my displeasure about the jokes they made, but he dismissed my feelings, telling me to grow up and take it like an adult because he found it funny. This wasn't the first time his partner had made hurtful remarks. On a previous occasion, she commented on my school skirt, claiming it was too short and telling me to pull it down. I didn't see it as an issue since it was mid-thigh length, but she insisted I was close to crossing a line. Now, my dad's partner is coming over again tonight. Given the unpleasant experiences I've had with both of them, I'd prefer to avoid their company and stay in my room. I still intend to be polite, but I simply don't want to be in close proximity to them. I easily get irritated, especially when my dad makes jokes at my expense in front of his partner, and I don't want to deal with that right now. I realize that by isolating myself, I may appear immature and like the one in the wrong for dwelling on the issue. However, their behavior genuinely bothered me, and I'm uncertain about how to handle the situation. I know my dad will claim I'm in the wrong, but I'm seeking a neutral perspective. Would I be the one in the wrong if I avoid them and stay in my room? Extra information: mixing food together makes it harder for me to eat, and it gives me a feeling of discomfort. I make an effort to keep my food separated and both my dad and his partner are aware of this preference. X200B. Fregley from Diary of a Wimpy Kid came to my office. When he asked me why he couldn't pull, I told that MFY he has no aura. People who are excellent at networking or are even famous all share this one trait that you probably don't have. People spend thousands of dollars on the wrong cosmetics every year, just for them to look like they got plastic surgery by the South Korean ghost doctor. I'm gonna keep it straight with you all. I bet so many of you wish you had listened as a kid and made it a habit to brush your teeth morning and night. All of your favorite celebrities have perfect teeth. While everything else about them may not be too special, it's always that smile that attracts people. The best part: all you people who have corn kernels for teeth don't have to pay millions of dollars. I had a patient not long ago who looked like Fregley from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Except for having pearly whites, he donned some dirty browns. He was a terribly awkward kid, and it came as no surprise when he told me he wanted to get his teeth whitened because of a girl. According to him, he had pulled a girl when it was required to wear masks in school. But when the mask mandate was lifted, she wanted to see his smile. He tried keeping on his mask on for as long as he could, but his crush's boy best friend snatched it off his face, revealing to the world his Tootsie Roll teeth. So, we needed to crack down and get to work. I was actually feeling bad for the poor kid. I asked how they were so stained and yellow, and he said he drank a lot of coffee because he stays up playing Genshin Impact every night. As he was telling me all this, I don't think he realized how terribly his breath smelled. So now not only was his breath terrible, but we also needed to fix up his highlighter teeth. He asked if I could give him veneers since it was a quick solution, and he didn't want to get made fun of anymore. He said that if better teeth were going to change what little he had left of his teenage years, then he wanted to do it fast. I couldn't give him veneers, because that would only cover up the problem, not get rid of it. He wanted to know how he could get white teeth naturally, and my answer to him was that he needed to brush his teeth with toothpastes that don't have harsh chemicals in them, because brands like Crest and Colgate, which everybody uses for some reason, have fluoride and hydrated silica. Too much fluoride leads to brown spots in the tooth and weakens it, making it more brittle and easier to chip off. As for hydrated silica, it damages tooth enamel, and using it to brush your teeth is like using sand to clean glass. So, if he thought he was cleaning his teeth every day, he was actually doing more damage and making it far dirtier than before. I told him that just changing to a natural toothpaste with better ingredients would be more effective for him since the standard brands weren't working. Lately, I've only been giving my patients ORL toothpaste because it is hydroxyapatite, which prevents and heals cavities. It whitens the teeth, and has non-toxic chemicals, unlike fluoride and hydrated silica. It's also naturally occurring, so it comes with no side effects. ORL also has the best taste, which makes it easier for my patients not to go back to their usual sweet toothpaste. But if I'm being honest with you, any toothpaste without harsh chemicals works. That's just the one I have seen the best results from. Just make sure to do the research. My patient tried arguing with me when he saw that the toothpaste costs almost $30, even though people spend thousands on clothes, makeup, and useless fitness equipment. But teeth are the only thing you can never take off. When I explained it to him that way, he accepted the ORL toothpaste, and I scheduled him for a 4-week checkup since that would be enough time for the toothpaste to show some results. 4 weeks later, I actually found him talking with the other people in the waiting room. This was something he had never done before, but he seemed really comfortable talking with everyone. The moment he entered my office, he immediately started ranting about his life, and as soon as he started speaking, I could see and smell the difference. This past month, his schoolmates had stopped saying bad things about him, and nobody called him butter teeth since his teeth weren't yellow anymore. And because he was far more approachable now that he was more confident with his appearance, he had some friends who invited him out a lot. Most of his nights were spent partying with them or playing video games. Mind you, he hadn't groomed himself at all and still had acne all over his cheeks and a horrible bowl cut. All he did was fix his teeth with the ORL toothpaste, and people were all over him. But I did recommend a barber to him because I was tired of looking at the real-life version of Vector. But maybe he could star in the next Despicable Me movie.
My husband lied about buying our teen daughter and her friends alcohol. My husband is a perpetual child. He never really seemed to grow up, and he has a very playful, childish nature. But this time around, his happy-go-lucky attitude led to a child being put in the hospital. When we first met, I loved his free, easygoing nature, but as we've aged and tried to mature, he just seems stuck at the age of 19. Some examples of this is my husband quits jobs very easily, he uses substances pretty recklessly, and all around acts like a teenager instead of a man with 2 kids. Our son is 13, and our daughter is 17. They're great kids and they're super open with us about anything going on in their lives. But as my daughter grows up, my husband seems to have a hard time separating himself from my daughter's teenage antics and being a disciplinarian to her instead of a friend. Such as when a couple of months ago, I found out that my husband had caught my daughter and her friends smoking WD in our shed, and instead of punishing her and kicking the friends out, he joined them. I only found this out months later when our son let the truth slip by accident. Aside from random incidents like this, our kids generally are well behaved, and usually, I am more worried about their dad screwing up than one of them getting into trouble. Well, everything that happened this week just goes to show that I was right to be worried about my husband's never-ending immaturity, and this time he's done real damage. My husband and I decided to take a short vacation together before the kids' school year started, and our house got crazy again. I had a long talk with both of my kids before we left, since it would be the longest that we had ever left them on their own. I went over emergency checklists and grocery lists with them repeatedly to the point where my husband said I was smothering them. I still had anxiety about leaving my babies, but my husband was supportive, and we had been having a fantastic trip. That was until our daughter called us in a total panic a couple of days into our trip. The time of the call was strange since it was the middle of the night back in our hometown when my phone rang. When I answered the call, I heard the sounds of chaos and people yelling and scrambling. When my daughter finally spoke, her words were scrambled and she was obviously intoxicated. She tried her best to explain to me that she had brought friends over to the house to drink, and one of them had thrown up all over herself and wasn't breathing. I told her to calm down, call 911 and keep me updated. When I ensured the police were on their way, I hung up and bought an early flight home before waking up my husband and telling him what had happened. He looked so bewildered when I asked him where he thought they got the alcohol. He just gave a worried look and shrugged. I thought that he must be feeling just as scared and surprised as me. I stayed in contact with my daughter the entire time we traveled home. The EMT had gotten her friend to the ER fast enough to pump her stomach, and she was recovering in the hospital with her parents. The entire time we were flying home, My husband didn't seem to be himself. I chalked it up to him being worried about our daughter's friend, but now I see the only thing he was worried about was himself. When we finally got home, my daughter was an apologetic mess. I comforted her even though I was angry at her irresponsibility. I sat her down and asked her seriously where he got the alcohol from. I couldn't believe my eyes when she glanced quickly at my husband and then at the ground. I just knew at that moment that he must have been behind all of this. It made perfect sense, given his personality. I looked at my husband and he glanced down at the floor just like my daughter. I felt like I was scolding another child instead of the father of my kids. I told my daughter to go to her room, and I asked my husband for nothing but the truth. No excuses, no apologies. I just asked him to tell me if he had bought our daughter and her friend alcohol. He started rambling, saying he never meant for them to go overboard, but he just wanted our daughter to feel cool and have fun while we were on vacation. So he bought them multiple handles of vodka since that's what they asked for. I had never been so frustrated, and I started to doubt my entire marriage for the first time. I just asked him why he had trusted teenagers like that and reminded him that he could have unalived another person's child with his stupidity. He looked hurt but said nothing. I was just so angry. I told him that he was an old man now and I was sick of his pathetic attempts to live out his youth through our daughter. That's when he apologized with tears in his eyes and left the room. I wonder if I've been too harsh on him, but it's not like I can be hard on our daughter when it was her own dad that got us into this situation. I will have one more serious talk with my husband about this, and after that conversation, I'll decide if I want to stay in this marriage.
My PP is too big and I hate it. My PP is so large I just cannot lug it around any longer. It is so insanely huge and has caused so many problems in my life. I cannot go to airports as they think I'm sneaking something in. So every time I go, I get touched as they try to take my PP off thinking it's a bomb. I cannot pleasure women as they are so horrified at the sight of my PP, that they immediately run away. My mother and father disown me after seeing the length of my shaft. Not only is it extraordinarily long, it is just too thick. I cannot relieve myself as my hands are just too small to choke the chicken. My humongous PP has ruined my life. I resent God for cursing me with this large chunk of meat that just drags across the ground. Doctors tell me I will never be able to get a PP reduction as they would have nowhere to put the PP. It would just take up far too much room. I had a girlfriend when I was a young lad. She loved me for who I was and did not care for this deformity, but one day, I took off my jeans and my PP flung out, smacking her and flinging her out the window. She died 2 hours later in the hospital. She was the only woman who ever loved me. My PP is just too ginormous. It has caused problems for myself and the people around me. For this reason, I will be ending it all. My P has taken over my life. But it cannot take over a life that does not exist.
What's the worst time you incorrectly guessed someone's Halloween costume? I own a bar and often work the register. Every year at this time I remember my F up from a couple years ago. At my bar, customers order at a designated spot at the bar where the POS is and the person working the register takes and expedites the drink orders. It's kind of fast foody but also super fast and convenient. I was working the register on Halloween a few years back. I was commenting on everyone's costume as they came up and telling the bartenders drink orders based on customers' costumes. Spider-Man. What can we do for you? We need 6 shots of tequila at table 4 for Jason Mask, etc. Dude comes up holding his hands in front of him at chest level. Fingers are all crooked like. He's not wearing any other kind of costume. Many customers are not wearing costumes, of course. I don't know why, but my brain registers that this is some kind of low-effort costume. He comes up, and I say, "Hey. Weird hands guy, what can I get for you?" He looks at me all taken aback. Then orders a beer. I relay the order to one of the bartenders. "We need a beer for creepy hands man." I look back to the customer as he struggles with his wallet, which is on a lanyard tucked in his shirt. Then I know. He's not weird hands guy for Halloween. This is his everyday situation. I just unknowingly made fun of a disabled person. Needless to say, I never commented on a costume ever again. It still keeps me up at night. My husband made a life-changing mistake, but I still love him. No one in my life seems to be able to sympathize with me about this, but all I'm doing is trying to be a faithful wife. I know some people may think my husband is a bad person all the way through, but I know that's not true. My husband and I met 8 years ago. He was working as a mechanic at the shop I was bringing my car to. One day when I brought my car in, he fixed it for free, then asked to take me out for dinner. He used to be such a gentleman, and back then, he was a peaceful, attentive man. I'm not sure what's happened to him since then. A couple of years back his original shop closed and he had to take a job at a dealership, and since then his mental health and overall behavior have been on a downward spiral. He never smiles anymore, and over the last 2 years, he has developed a nasty alcohol addiction. He was never a huge drinker, but a couple of months into his new job he started drinking every night and it's only getting worse. We have 2 toddlers together, and he used to be such an active father. Now he claims he's too tired and the only times he plays with them is when he's almost blackout intoxicated and gets in a reckless mood. My own mental state has been deteriorating fast as time goes on, and I keep asking my husband to cut down or even go to Alcoholics Anonymously. He has peed our bed in the middle of the night multiple times after drinking too much, and I have gotten upset at him on more than one occasion for drinking while he was alone watching our kids. Things were only escalating, but this week he crossed a line, and now our family's future has taken a turn for the worst, all because of my husband's selfishness. I had been suspecting that he had started driving intoxicated, but I really had no way to prove it, and I'm the one who always drives the kids everywhere, so I didn't get around to questioning him about it. Well, this week, my husband got home very late at night after work and just stormed straight into the bathroom without greeting me. When I knocked on the bathroom door to ask if he was okay, I heard him crying, and he yelled at me to go away. I went to sleep right after that, but in the morning I was awoken by the sound of our doorbell ringing nonstop. It was a Saturday morning, so all my kids were home when I opened the door to two police officers. They pointed to my husband's car in the driveway and asked if the owner was inside. That's when I noticed some new severe damage to my husband's bumper. I started panicking and asked them what was going on. They said that they had tracked this car back to a fatal hit and run that had occurred the night before and asked how I was related to the owner. I answered them, and that's when they told me my husband had T-boned a mother and her child and put them both in the ICU last night. I started hyperventilating, and I started to feel lightheaded right before they dropped the bomb on me that the child had unfortunately not survived the accident and had succumbed to his injuries in the middle of the night. I started to dissociate as I heard my children start waking up and walking into the living room. The cops said they had a warrant for my husband's arrest. I had no choice but to let them in my house and watch them wake up my husband and put him in cuffs. My husband puked on the cops and struggled as they let him out. My kids were screaming and crying, asking me what was going on as they watched their father be dragged out of the house. It was traumatizing to see, and I can't believe my babies had to be witness to that. I just pray that they won't remember this as they grow up. Anyway, my husband was put in the county jail, and I know we will be drawing in legal fees soon enough. I called my mom and my sister, and they were both appalled by my husband's mistake and begged me to leave him. I explained to him that he was the father of my kids and I had promised to stick by him in our wedding vows. I know it's hard to believe, but I want to keep trying to support my husband, even though I know it will be hard to forgive him for taking a child's life.
Married men of Reddit, what moment with your future wife made you think, yup, I'm asking this girl to marry me? Things were going really well, and I was saying to myself, if this keeps up, I think next summer I'll pop the question. Then, my mother had a stroke. We were all sitting in the waiting area outside the ICU, because only 2 people were allowed in at a time. It was my now wife's birthday, and a Wednesday, and she didn't hesitate to take the day off to sit with me and my family. I went to visit my father at home, and she came with me. Her Italian instincts kicked it, and she brought a load of groceries and a lasagna with her. My father was a mess at the hospital, and it fell on me and my siblings to speak with the doctors and make plans. I would get home, and pour myself some bourbon. She made me dinner, and just sat with me while I silently sobbed. It wasn't about how great we were when things were good, it was about how perfect she was when things were bad. I bought the ring 2 months later.
Over a year ago, I made a comment that fueled my boyfriend's insecurities, and I've paid for it every day since. In spring of 2022, my boyfriend and I, both in our mid-20s, had been dating for a few months and had a great relationship. The topic of our past came up. He asked me if his was the biggest I've been with. I had only been with 3 other people, but I was honest and said no, it's my fault. I take full responsibility and should have diverted the conversation before it even went there. After that, he remained insecure about it despite my attempts to apologize and reassure him over the course of many months. He brought it up constantly, especially in arguments that were many times completely unrelated, just so he could have an edge over me and invalidate my feelings. It felt like because of this insecurity that I caused, I wasn't even allowed to have feelings. He claims I have some type of preference, that I don't think he's enough, and spoke of me in ways that felt degrading. All of this is untrue. I tell him he's more than enough, perfect, and that I love every part of him and our intimate life. I acknowledged what I've done wrong, but it didn't seem like forgiveness was ever coming. This winter, he went through my phone while I was sleeping to find a group chat that my friends used to discuss hookups and hadn't been texted in for almost a year, so he had to do some serious scrolling just to find it. He knew this chat existed, and I should have deleted it. I completely forgot about it. Before I even met him, I texted in the chat about a previous hookup and the size of his thing. I was super ashamed, but it's in the past for a reason and it wasn't something I wanted resurfacing. I was so hurt that he would do this. He even took pictures of the chat and would reread the text, which almost felt like harassment or mockery. I understand how terrible it must have been for him to see it, and this worsened his insecurities exponentially. He brings it up all the time, and insists I didn't delete the chat for a reason. This doesn't feel fair. The sheer amount of times he has brought up these topics, and the power his insecurities and my past has held in this relationship, makes me almost traumatized. I'm working to end the relationship because I can't deal with this anymore, but it's been difficult considering how close we were. I have been far from perfect, but his issues with his Willie, my comment from over a year ago, and this group chat are thrown in my face every day, and the worst part is, he claims to be over it and that he hardly brings it up anymore. This couldn't be farther from the truth, so he is clearly not self-aware about it. Wow, I really needed to get this off my chest.
It's not my fault that your son got no hands. For context, I'm a teacher, and I teach senior students. I am advising a class of STEM students and handle all STEM and senior high subjects. Monday class starts like every Monday class, flag ceremony, going to classes, etc. At recess, I noticed that some teachers were talking to some grade 8 students. Well, I don't know what time the grade 8 students were. It looked like they were up to no good, but I didn't bother to intervene, because we're professionals and trained to deal with that kind of stuff. After the classes, I facilitated the cleaning of my classroom and almost always went home at almost 5 p.m. after most of the students and other teachers had gone off. I ride a motorcycle going to work. We own a car but rarely use it because it's impractical with the gas prices. My work is at least 9 kilometers or 6 miles away from home. As I was going home, noticed a bunch of our students forming a circle, not sure of the term, but there are a bunch of them in an area, about 5 to 6 of them in a waiting shed and seemed to be hitting something. It got my curiosity, stopped and turned back to see what they're up to. When I called them, they all ran away, panicked as they recognized me. I immediately saw a kid lying down on the pavement and blood flowing. I rushed to the kid and checked if he was breathing, putting him in a recovery position to his side, as I noticed his nose bleeding, a cut on his forehead, swollen left eye and other bruises. I opened the underseat box from my motorcycle and got a cloth tied to it with the rubber I had on his forehead. Called an emergency response. The kid woke up at this point and I told him to just lay down. Some bystanders noticed me as I yelled for help. I asked them if they knew the kid's parents and some of them recognized the kid and immediately ran to their house for his parents. After about 10 minutes an ambulance came, and as the ambulance came, I stood aside as they removed the cloth bandage I put on his forehead. They asked me some questions, and I told them the story. The parents arrived panicked, the mother was crying, and they went with the paramedics. I didn't have any update that day, went home, and told my wife the story, and she kind of teased me because I saved someone today. That's her way of saying she's proud of me. I was trained as an emergency responder, and yes, I was proud of that. Today, I was attending a seminar, when I got a call from my school head. The parents of the kid wanted to file a case against me of all people, because I didn't interfere earlier. I didn't do anything to avoid this conflict. As a teacher, I should know how to mitigate situations like this. I was negligent as a teacher. I did not prioritize the safety of their child and they claimed they contacted a lawyer, telling them that the school or I should be the one paying the hospital bills, because it was our fault this happened, or else they'll file a case. Turns out, the students I saw that some teachers were talking to, were the ones who beat up the kid. The other teachers believed their stories and that they were just talking at that time. The kid's name is Alvin, not real name, and he was a shy kid, with problems with his left eye. He was getting bullied because of that, and now, the doctor said that he may never see with that eye again. It broke my heart. Tomorrow, I should be attending the second day of my seminar, but I will go talk to the parents to straighten things up. I understand that they're just run by their emotions. I know I didn't do anything wrong, I didn't even know their kid up to that point and it happened outside the school parameters, so the school has no authority or obligations. I'm not pointing any blame to others. I just kinda feel guilty, knowing that if I talked to the students earlier that Monday, I don't know, maybe I could have handled things better. I stored my puke in a stadium cup so I could see the rest of the show. I was watching August D perform D-Day in Chicago on May 6th. This night was full of unfortunate events, but this is the only one I need to admit to. I wasn't feeling too well toward the end of Youngi's show, so I sat down. I really started to feel nauseous, like I was about to hurl. I look all around for an emergency route, but I can't find anything, except for a large clear soda fountain cup. The cup was mostly empty underneath my neighbor's chair. So I reach over and snatch the cup and curl up on the floor. I start to puke until I'm dry heaving. The music was very loud, but I still tried to vomit as quietly as I could. I paused for a long time before hiding the clear cup under my neighbor's chair and waited for the show to end. The show continued for about an hour before we were leaving. I hadn't really gotten a good view of my neighbor's chair beyond that, so when exiting I'd completely ignored grabbing the cup or doing anything with it. Upon getting outside to my car, I realized just what I'd done and kind of stood around ensuring that my neighbors, whom I could at least somewhat recognize, weren't stuck with a cup of vomit. However, tragedy struck, and I'd seen one of my neighbors coming out with the cup. I wanted to warn them, but before I'd even begun walking they took a nice gulp of my puke and instantly vomited themselves. It was a horrendous sight to see, and I wanted to apologize, but at that point going up to them wouldn't have made the situation better for them or myself. So, I promptly turned around and began speed walking to my car. To whoever you are that drank from my vomit cup, I am so incredibly sorry and hope I didn't ruin your night. When I'm nauseous, I need to vomit, regardless of where I am or what I'm doing. I left my wife because I'm sick of everything needing to match her aesthetic. I know it seems like a dumb thing to end my marriage over. But after dealing with this for so long, I'm finally done. My wife and I are both in our 30s. We have a daughter. My wife has always been pretty into appearances, but it was never that bad. She just wanted things to look nice when people came over and for special occasions and holidays. Which I fully supported. I helped her purchase decorations and put them up. When our daughter was born, she designed the baby room herself, and I executed the whole thing for her, painted the walls, installed lights, new closet. It was her hobby, and I thought it was nice to live in a nice house too. But it all changed when she started an Instagram page for moms, and got a massive amount of followers, about 400,000 since our daughter was born. Ever since then, I feel like I don't live in a house, I live in an Instagram photo shoot. There can't be any proof we actually live here. My wife stresses so much about things looking good that she doesn't actually enjoy the moment. She started a fight with me right after our daughter took her first steps. Because in the video, I had put my drink down on the table behind her, and it was all she could see, and how she'd need to edit it out of the video. She called me a selfish prick for putting my drink down on a coffee table to watch my daughter take her first steps. Our daughter's bedroom is just a mass of beige and cream. There are barely any toys in it, which was fine while our daughter was small, but now she's getting older. My wife refuses to buy her any toys that don't match her aesthetic, which is basically any toy my daughter likes. My mother took my daughter to the store and let her pick out a toy. She picked out this really nice pink dollhouse from the show she watches. She got all of the dolls and furniture, and my wife told her she had to keep it at my mother's house because there was no place for it at home. We absolutely had room and space for it, she just didn't want the pink, since it didn't match. My wife is convinced I'm leaving for another woman and I'm having an affair, since my reason is bullshit. But I'm not, this is all my true feeling. I just can't keep feeling like I'm trapped in a museum where I can't touch or move anything. I can't even build a blanket fort with my kid without my wife flipping out that they're decorative blankets that she had folded a special way. No matter who gets the kid, I'm putting a clause in the custody agreement that bans photos of my daughter on social media. I'm not going to force my daughter to be a tool for her aesthetic.
For more stories, head over to my YouTube channel, link in bio.
What is the wildest thing you have ever seen a patient's parents say? We hope that her child dies. OBGY department in government hospitals are the most chaotic ones. In last 1.5 months, I have seen so many cases of rape, underage pregnancy, abortion due to physical abuse, poisoning, etc., that I have lost the count. It was a regular Saturday night, and I was on a 12-hour night shift. This young female who didn't look much older than 15 to 16 years came to the emergency labor room with full-term pregnancy and labor pain. She had only one relative accompanying her. While we were taking the history and examining the patient, we sent relative for some documentation. The girl claimed that her age was 19 and said that she was married. So we admitted her like we do with all the patients. When her mother came, we confirmed the history and found out that everything was lie. The girl was 16-year-old and had an affair with a 50-year-old guy who got her pregnant. This was a very sensitive case. Our residents explained about the whole medical legal procedure and went ahead with the admission. I was sitting on my chair when the patient's mother told me, we had to hide her from society for 9 months. We are ashamed of what has happened and we can't show our faces to people now. We hope that her child dies. I couldn't react or reply as I felt too numb. Everything that happened was definitely not right, but wishing for someone's death is just cruel. We delivered the child same night and it was a healthy baby boy. I don't know what happened with her and the child or how the family took news of the newborn. I can only hope they understand the innocence of the girl's age and maybe forgive her. My girlfriend won't be intimate with me because I made love with a man. My girlfriend and I have been in a relationship for 2.5 years, and since 7 months we opened up the relationship. This was a great boost for our relationship, since we both have a very high libido and enjoy flirting and kissing with other people at parties and stuff like that. Our feelings for each other are at an all-time high. We've had some 3-ways and 4-ways with random strangers, or couples we know, and we sometimes have nights where my girlfriend goes to her friends with benefits, and I invite my friends with benefits over. At the end of the night we cuddle up together and tell each other about our intimate adventures. Following that, we usually make love with each other and we go to sleep. It's safe to say that we are very comfortable in our open relationship and we love to talk about it together and with our friends. My girlfriend knows that I am bisexual, and she has been very supportive about it. Her only preference is that she doesn't like to see me kiss or make love with a man while she is there. I said that I respect that, and I'll refrain from doing those acts while she is around. Last week my girlfriend and I were at a big party, and I hooked up with a guy I met there. After some flirting we eventually made love in his room, with protection. This was my first time going all the way with a man. I didn't tell my girlfriend that I was going to hook up with him beforehand, but our rule has been that I don't have to tell beforehand. These previous cases were all women. It was in the heat of the moment that I was taken to his bedroom. Not informing each other before doing the act has never been a problem before. After the lovemaking, I ran to my girlfriend with a big smile on my face to excitedly tell her that I made love with a guy I met at the party. She was shocked. She just stood there and was like, I didn't expect that, why didn't you tell me? Who was it? My excited smile quickly faded from my face, as I didn't expect this reaction from her. I thought she was totally okay with my bisexuality, as long as I didn't do anything in the same room as her. The next morning, I tried to get some, and she told me she didn't want to. I mean, that's okay of course, but something felt off. Eventually she told me that she needed some time before she could make love with me again. She said that it felt dirty to her that I had been in contact with some guy's thingy. She told me that I didn't do anything wrong and that I didn't break any rules in our relationship. She was even happy for me that I had the chance to further develop my sexuality. It just felt kinda gross to her and she needs time to adjust. My girlfriend hooked up with her friends with benefits yesterday. When I asked her if she wants to make love with me this morning, she didn't want to because of the same reason that I just explained. It still felt gross. This irritated me, and I asked her if we could stop meeting up with our friends with benefits until she's ready to be intimate with me again. She got very loud and told me that that's really unfair and that I just have to respect her boundaries for now. She thinks that I am punishing her because she is not ready yet to make love with me again. I feel like she is not respecting my boundary of me not wanting her to make love with her friends with benefits until she's ready to be intimate with me again. Am I wrong for this? I don't know how to proceed. Am I the a-hole for refusing to meet my girlfriend's parents? I'm writing this on behalf of my boyfriend, who is allegedly the asshole in this situation. We are both 23 years old and have been dating for a few months now. Recently, we started living together in his apartment. As for my mother, she has always been unpredictable in her feelings about our relationship. On some days, she genuinely likes him and treats him like her own son. However, on other days, she becomes easily annoyed and resorts to using racial slurs when talking about him, even though he is Asian and I am white. The frustrating part is that she never says these things directly to him. Of course, I am angry about this, but financially I still depend on her as I am currently in college. So, for now, I have to tolerate it. On the other hand, my boyfriend harbors understandable resentment towards my mother due to her behavior. However, he has never said anything disrespectful to her or treated her poorly in any way. When we visit her house for dinners, he even tries to avoid her by going to different rooms because he is afraid of her reaction. It's worth mentioning that he gets along well with my father, and they genuinely like each other. Now, to the recent incident. This past Saturday, we went to my parents' house to borrow their car, and everything seemed fine. However, last night, when my parents came to our house to retrieve the car keys, a problem arose. My mother made a big issue out of the fact that my boyfriend did not come downstairs with me to meet them. In all honesty, I didn't think it was necessary to ask him to come, as he had an exam the next day and needed to study. I thought it would only take me a quick 5 minutes to grab the keys and return home. My mother claimed his absence was disrespectful and that it was a sign of how he would treat me in the future. I feel caught in the middle of this conflict and genuinely don't know how to address it or stand up for my boyfriend. Personally, I don't believe he is the asshole in this situation. That's why I'm asking for your opinions. Is my boyfriend truly in the wrong for not meeting them for those 5 minutes last night?
Reddit, what is your most cringe story about someone who has a crush on you? Was walking with an ex through a park, bent down on one knee to tie my shoelace and heard her gasp and say yes. I looked up confused, then both of us looked at each other horrified when we realized what just happened. Close friend tells me she has had very strong feelings for me for the past 3 years. She tells me this a couple days before we graduate college. I didn't feel the same way about her. According to a mutual friend, her original plan was to romantically profess her love on the day of our graduation in front of all of our family and friends. Went to a guy's house to do a project in high school. It involved the internet, and while he sat next to me I tried to navigate to Google. Unfortunately, the address bar autofilled and took me to his last Google search. Page 2 of results for my name. Every link had been clicked. We both just sat in silence.
My kidnapper won't leave me alone. I can't escape him anymore. 5 years ago, I was kidnapped, held by the throat, intimately assaulted, and almost unalived by some psychopath. I was walking home at night, and this was a total stranger that snatched me. I had never seen him in my life. Eventually, I was able to run out the door of his house while he was distracted. I've never run that fast before. I could feel him behind me and knew it was life or death. I was small enough to squeeze under the fence of his gated community that he couldn't fit through to get away. I never called the police back then. Yes, I know I should have, but I was afraid to at the time. So, I kept it to myself and moved on. Fast forward to now. He came into my place of work as a customer 2 months ago. I freaked out and hid in the back for a while. When I thought he was gone, I went back out. I was in an area where no one else was, and he came up behind me and rubbed his body on my backside. Like he was trying to get past me, but there was plenty of room, and I knew he did it to be creepy. He came in a couple of days later and just shopped around while watching me. Now, today, he came into my job again. I got really upset, and I gave him a death glare. He kept eye contact with me until someone walked up to ask me something. I decided to go to the back and talk to a manager. I told him there was a creepy guy out there, and he immediately said, "Oh, is it the guy that describes the exact dude? Yeah, that guy is a creep." I then told him that the guy kidnapped and assaulted me and had been coming in here. The manager then tells me that this man is not a regular customer and only started coming in when I started a few months ago. And comes when it's my shift and looks around all sketchy. I got chills. The manager watched the guy walk outside so he could identify the vehicle he was driving and then try to get a photo of his license plate. The photo ended up being too blurry to make out. This is just also creepy, and I'm literally going to be on edge all the time at work now. The actual assault happened 5 years ago. He hasn't done anything illegal or threatened me in his trips to my job, but I'm staying alert and let my manager know to look out for him.
My old boss was a corn addict, with a corn attic. My old boss, who is married, has several kids, and lives a relatively successful life, used to have a shed that had an attic that was always locked. One day I was getting some fertilizer and mulch out of the shed and I noticed the attic door was propped open. My boss was off the property and I decided to sneak inside to take a peek. The moment I walked up the stairs there were 2 massive panels of plywood that had cutouts of nudes from Playboys and collaged together to make a giant 5 by 20 corn wall. A little further down he had like 2 magazine racks with literally hundreds of Playboys and an entire cabinet filled with VHS tapes and DVDs. Like it was his Jack Shack or something. I have a video I took of the corn wall. All that to say that I was accused of stealing one of his VHS tapes. Like the dude literally walked up to me, a high school student, and was like, "Did you steal anything from my attic?" I just played dumb and acted like I had no idea what he was talking about. He called my parents at one point and told them what he thought had happened. My parents believed me for the most part. The craziest part of the whole thing is the tape showed up 2 weeks later. Turns out his adult son just dropped by and borrowed it without telling his dad. On the bright side, my boss called my parents and apologized and told them about the misunderstanding. Having a secret corn attic? Okay, fine. I get it. But the dude got straight up crafty and went full-blown grandma making a corn collage like it was a quilt or something. The guy literally had a desk with an ongoing project. He had an X-Acto knife, because scissors aren't precise enough I guess, and the man had some of those glue sticks like it was a middle school art project. I can already see the conversations he has with his wife. Honey, if you need me I'll be out in the shed doing a little woodworking. Anyway, I ended up quitting not too long after that. Got my freshman dorm leader fired a year after he called the cops on me. I've never really posted anything before, but I have a funny revenge/karma story that my friends have always enjoyed. I first got to college my freshman year and met the dorm leader, RA at most schools. Like most colleges, the dorm leader was the upperclassman that lived in the dorms and monitored the freshman halls. My dorm leader's name was Julio, fake name by the way, and at first, he seemed like a nice dude that minded his own business. He talked about how he would stay out of everyone's business if we would stay out of his. Also, he tried to be the cool dorm leader and always mentioned to me about how he drank tons of alcohol his freshman year in the dorms. He gave off the impression he really didn't care if we ever drank in our dorm rooms but to just keep it on the low if we did. I really didn't drink much at all, but I appreciated the fact he seemed pretty normal and didn't try to rat on kids. During the last week of October of my freshman year of college, I had one of the hardest weeks of my academic career. I was a biochemistry major taking some pretty tough classes and had 3 exams that week. At the end of the week, a friend I had recently made down the hall invited me to his dorm room to watch an upcoming NBA game. As we were watching the game, he had a bottle of vodka and gave some to the guys in the dorm. Being a naive and stupid freshman kid just trying to make some friends, I took 1 shot of vodka and continued to watch the game. As we're watching the game, one of the guys in the dorm spills a bottle of soda and rushes to the bathroom to grab some paper towels. As he walks out of the dorm room, Julio walked by and noticed the bottle of vodka. He laughed and said something of the sorts of I remember when I was a freshman, haha, just try and keep it down. We thanked him and told him to have a good night. It seemed like a normal conversation and nothing out of the ordinary. 30 minutes later we hear a knock on the door and 2 policemen showed up with breathalyzers. They told us they had received a complaint from Julio about underage drinking and a party being thrown in the dorm room. Remember, it was 3 guys watching a Lakers game on a Thursday night at 8 p.m. I ended up getting a minor in consumption charge for blowing a .02, had to do 20 hours community service, a reflection journal, and appear to the Judicial Affairs Center at my college about my supposed drinking problem. I'm not blaming the officer for giving me a ticket, but I was pretty upset that Julio, who always talked about getting shit-faced freshman year in the dorm, called the police right after he essentially gave us the okay for the night. A few weeks later I see Julio and straight up asked him why he decided to rat me out. Specifically, I asked why he didn't just tell me to head back to my dorm if he had a problem with the alcohol instead of calling the police right after our conversation. He responds word for word with "You made a decision and had to suffer the consequences of that decision." After that incident, I never really talked to him but he always tried to be buddy-buddy when he saw me in the hallway. Anyway, I eventually leave the dorms and move off campus for my sophomore year. I had decided to rush a fraternity my freshman year and ended up meeting some really nice guys. I have never been the fraternity type, but I went to a smaller college where fraternities are a lot different than most places. During the second semester of my sophomore year, my fraternity was taking a new pledge class. One day I received a text from Julio saying one of the guys pledging your fraternity has been caught dealing alcohol to another freshman in the dorms. I thought I would let you know. Turns out Julio was the dorm leader for a freshman pledging my fraternity and ratted him out to Judicial Affairs as well. Thinking the term dealing alcohol was the lamest/funniest thing I have ever heard, I sent that to our fraternity group me and everyone laughed about it. About a week later, that kid pledging our fraternity came up to me asking about the message I received from Julio. Essentially, a pretty similar thing happened to him like what happened to me. Julio found out he had given another kid in the dorm a bottle of wine and reported it to the police. This kid ended up getting a minor in possession and had to speak with Judicial Affairs. This is where the story gets hilarious. In his meeting with Judicial Affairs, the kid pledging our fraternity told the Judicial Affairs guy that his dorm leader, Julio was now a senior at this point, had texted me about the charges pending against him. Apparently, it's a huge violation to discuss pending charges against a freshman in your dorm to a third party. The Judicial Affairs guy told him that if he could prove Julio was discussing this charge with a third party, also known as me, he would receive severe sanctions. Basically, if I sent that text to the Judicial Affairs people, Julio would be in a shitload of trouble, so I sent the text that night to the Judicial Affairs people. After that, I didn't hear anything about what happened to Julio and had honestly forgotten about it. However, nearing the end of the school year in my sophomore year, I saw Julio at the dining hall and came up to speak to me. He tells me a story about how he knows I was the one that ratted him to Judicial Affairs, how he ended up getting fired from his dorm leader position, lost the scholarship money his dorm leader job provided him, and overall how shitty his life has been since he got fired. After going through his entire sob story he asked me, why did you do that? This could have been handled completely differently. I didn't have to get fired and I could have kept my scholarship money. I look at him dead in the eye for what seemed like 30 seconds and say, Julio, you made a decision and had to suffer the consequences of that decision.
Mother-in-law likes me now because she found out my inheritance amount. Trigger warning. Death. I, 33F, have been with my husband, 33M, for 17 years, married 12 years. I was 16 when I met my mother-in-law and my husband is the youngest of 3 boys. I hate my mother-in-law because the first time she met me, she told me that I didn't fit in their family. She was terrible to my brother-in-law's wives too. Mother-in-law has always treated me the worst mostly because she thought I was poor and that would steal all of my husband's money. She hated the family I came from without even meeting them, saying that my parents did not raise a nice girl. My husband being the youngest was her baby and when she found out we were infertile, she also blamed it on me. She told me that the least that I could do as a beach was to give my husband an offspring. Anyway, she has met my parents only once and she wasn't nice. She snickers at everything my mother says and looks at them in a very demeaning manner, all because she thought she was too good for them despite us all being from the same small town. In 17 years I've dealt with a lot from this woman. 10 months ago I lost both of my parents and it has been the hardest year of my life. We were in no contact with mother-in-law but slipped after my parents died. After they died she tried to rug sweep all past abuse and wanted us to play happy family. I didn't do that and quickly became her target again. She was even complaining my husband was doing so much work to help me pack up my parents' house. Then she found out that my parents' estate was worth a decent amount of money since they owned a house and a lot of properties. She just always assumed they were broke and I was a gold digger. She never got to know me or them. As soon as she found out, a switch flipped. She now tells me that she loves me and that she's always been by my side during these hard times. I just blocked her everywhere. I used the money to pay off our house and have some left over. Well, because of no contact she couldn't get a hold of us and this horrible woman wrote me a handwritten card. All of them said nice things about how great I was and guilt-tripped about how she spent Easter alone and that her health was declining. Passive-aggressive digs. In 17 years she's forgotten my birthday, including this year. She's been horrible and abusive and all of a sudden she's nice. She has never written me a letter. Not even when I lost both my parents did I get a card. Nothing has changed besides she found out about the inheritance and that I paid off the house she told us not to buy. She also tried to lie and say she loved my parents and wished she knew them more. I am so angry I want to explode. The letter ended with that she loved me and see you soon. She did come the next week after I received the letter. She was pounding on our door and my husband told me to let her be and not to let her enter. After she realized that we weren't going to open the door, she started screaming and called us SHTs. While she was screaming outside, my husband made coffee and sat beside me. She left after 30 minutes because a neighbor berated her and told her to leave. My short husband slept with multiple women and bragged about it. Now he's angry that I got revenge intimacy with another man, but he doesn't know I lied. I caught my husband of 10 years cheating on me with multiple women, and he bragged endlessly about how he was able to get laid. I know one woman who is 19 years old, and it seems like it was just an ego boost for him. I always knew he had issues with his ego because he was a very insecure man. Whenever someone did something better than him, no matter how minimal, he would get jealous and try to embarrass that person. Not long ago, my younger sister was being celebrated for graduating college, and my husband quickly tried to ruin that ceremony by saying college is just a scam, and she won't make it far in life. He was only saying all of this because he was forced to drop out since he had horrible grades. Looking back, I regret choosing him, but I thought that he was a sweet person, so it didn't matter if he was a bit egotistical. When I found out that he was cheating, I left him and took my kids with me. I also exposed his affairs, and his parents are very embarrassed. I honestly see this affair as an opportunity to escape from him. But he sees this differently. He's been begging me to take him back and saying the affairs meant nothing to him. I know for sure he is begging because his mom kicked his butt. He showed zero sympathy when he was bragging about sleeping with multiple women. No one is taking his side, so he thinks that me forgiving him and taking him back means he'll be accepted by others again. But I refused every single time because he said things he said about me, about my body, that he can never come back from. I nearly died after giving birth to my son, and all he said was that my body is ruined. He said I wasn't F-able anymore, and when he was throwing the affairs in my face, he said that was a big reason he cheated on me. He said I couldn't satisfy him properly because he couldn't get off to my body, like he used to. I confided in my friends about all of this and they said I should hook up with someone else as revenge. I was hesitant because I don't do random hookups, but I liked the idea itself. So, with the help of my friends, I staged a revenge affair. The last time he came to convince me, he said he cut off all contact with his affair partner and started therapy, so I have to forgive him. Though, that wasn't enough. I wanted to crush his ego and crush his confidence. I told him that I slept with someone else, and he didn't believe me because he said I was too ugly for someone to sleep with me. He was doing me a favor by giving me a second chance, so there was no need to lie. I was baffled. In that second, he was just dead to me. I pulled out my phone where there were text messages between me and a random guy, which was just me and my friends chatting. We sent naked pictures, fake ones, and very intimate messages. With the proof, he believed me, but then started being annoying by constantly asking more about this guy. I told him we met at the gym and he hit on me first. I went into detail about how hot the guy was and how tall he was. My husband was always insecure about his height since he's 5 feet 5 inches. I could see him losing his cool and started asking, "How can you do this to me? Did you use protection? How many times did you do it? Did he make you come?" I answered all of his questions, which only made him red in the face. The last thing that actually broke him was when he asked my friend about it. She lied to him and said that we were making noises all night. He was in the process of having a meltdown. I might actually hook up with a random person because I am done with him and I'm done with our marriage. Especially after texting me that I shouldn't think I'm better because I slept with a man out of my league. He will still not be with me and he just used me as a cum dump. Who's the most impressive athlete you know? Surya Banali. Banali was a competitive figure skater back in 1994. She is well known for being the first woman to attempt a backflip in Olympic figure skating. Backflips are illegal in competitive figure skating, but that didn't stop her. It's a move that's been banned since 1976 when American skater Terry Kubica performed it at the Winter Olympics in Austria. To this day, this backflip is the first and only legal backflip ever performed in competitive figure skating. But Surya wasn't too concerned about the legality of the trick. Why? Well, Surya had already been to the Winter Olympics 2 years earlier, which is when it became clear to her that she didn't quite fit the established mold of figure skaters. Every time she does one of these breaks, it stops the floor program and it really hurts artistically. Surya preferred athleticism over artistic skating, and the judges looked down on her for it, saying that her style didn't meet the figure skating criteria. So when the Winter Olympics came around again in 1994, Surya decided that she was going to play by her own rules. Surya's Olympic run started off in a relatively standard way, but it quickly became clear that she wasn't there to take it easy. Surya pushed her abilities to the limits, and she was performing far more explosive and spectacular jumps than the other skaters. She performed triple jumps and triple toes often in her routine. She still had a little bit of hope that the judges would see her differently this time, so her choreography was more artistic and graceful than before, while still keeping the impressive jumps only she could do. However, halfway through her routine, disaster struck. She failed to land a jump and fell on the ice. Surya picked herself up and kept going with her routine. But with that one failed landing, she knew her chances of getting a gold medal were gone. However, for Surya, losing that hope was freedom. There was one trick that Surya knew that she could do, which no other female skater had even attempted in competitive figure skating. It definitely wouldn't win her a medal. In fact, even attempting the trick would result in an automatic 2-point reduction to her score. See, when backflips were officially banned in competition, the reason given was that they are unnecessarily dangerous and aren't a real skating jump because it was thought impossible to land them on one foot, which is typically how figure skating jumps are performed. But at this point, Surya had made the decision that she was going to forget the judges and instead she would leave her mark in the history books. Well, when Surya attempted the backflip, she landed on one foot. She was the only person in the world I've seen land a backflip on one foot, especially in skates. I do a backflip and it hurts to land on both feet. Surya turned her back to the judges and faced the crowd. It was just amazing. One of the complaints from the judges that makes this jump illegal is that you can't land on one foot well. Surya showed that you can. My boyfriend left me behind on a hiking trail in the middle of the night. I've never seen this side of him, so I'm feeling very confused. Me and my boyfriend both hike for fun and we've gone on easy hikes before this. We decided to go on a chill 3.8-mile hike this past weekend. Everything was good going up to the park, and when we started the trail, there were a lot more people than we were expecting, and I had to catch up to him several times. He naturally walks fast. I'm not in bad shape, so that's not part of the issue. He will usually wait for me or stop and take a break with me. After reaching the top, we decided to look for a spot to eat lunch near the waterfall. We had to climb a few rocks down to get closer. Nearby there is a man in his 40s with his young daughter and a group of younger men and women in the water. Later on he tells me that the man was checking me out the whole time, to which I was oblivious. After we finish eating and decide to head back up, we have to climb up the same rocks and he goes first. He points to the rock he just climbed and stands there to help me at first. He is 6 feet 2 inches, so that rock was at shoulder level for me. I tell him I'm going to try another way, and he says wow, fine, good luck then, and walks away. I finally figure out how to get back up a few minutes later and catch up to him where he is waiting at the top of the trail. At this point, I'm annoyed and tell him he shouldn't have just walked away. He says it's cause I didn't listen to him. He then told me out of nowhere that he wanted to try to find this spot that was off trail, even though I thought it might be dangerous since it was getting dark soon. But I really didn't feel like upsetting him more than he already seemed. He then turned off the trail and started walking ahead of me super fast straight into the woods. I tried to follow him, but he just kept walking faster and faster. The next thing I knew, I was in the woods completely alone and the sun was going down. I started to panic, but I just tried to use my survival skills to try and navigate back to the trail. I didn't find my way back to the trail until it was completely dark, and it took me another half hour to finally get back to the end of the trail where our car was. When I walked up to our car, I saw my boyfriend sitting inside just playing on his phone. I instantly asked him why he would leave me alone like that. He said that I should have listened to him better and just started the car and started driving home. Honestly, I'm shocked and kind of disturbed that he literally left me in the middle of the woods while it got darker and darker. I feel like I don't know him at all and I'm nervous to go on another hike with him. I could have easily been in more danger this time, all because of his actions, and I'm even surprised he didn't completely abandon me and take the car.
What is the most frustrating thing about being a man, as opposed to being a woman? Suppose a 5-year-old girl came to you and said, "My dad sleeps in my bed sometimes." Would you think that's a little fishy? Would you be on the lookout for possible signs of abuse, whereas before she said that, it hadn't crossed your mind? Would you feel the need to tell someone else about this? If, later, her mother explained that the daughter has bunk beds in her room, and sometimes the dad takes the empty bunk because the mom is snoring in their room, would you think you jumped to conclusions earlier? Or would you still be a little suspicious, like the mother is covering for her husband? That's one of the frustrating things about being a man, the presumption of guilt when it comes to all things possibly creepy/intimate/abusive. As a male and a teacher, the number one rule I have at work, above all others, has nothing to do with educating children. It has everything to do with protecting myself against false allegations. Don't ever be alone with a student. Do not put yourself in a position where they can accuse you of something, and your only defense is your own word. Because, even if you're not found guilty in the legal sense, a single allegation is enough to sully your reputation forever. Did your wife or girlfriend get a black eye, perhaps while playing sports? No matter what she says to people, there are going to be a lot of people who see the black eye and assume you gave it to her. You will have a cloud of suspicion over you in their eyes forever. Does your young daughter seem to know more about intimacy than is age appropriate? That's one of the signs of abuse. Guess who is automatically assumed to be the abuser when there's any sign of abuse? That's right, the man with the most access to that girl. Does your town have women's only versions of things, but no men's only versions of those things? Around here, there are women's only gyms, yoga classes, and swimming times at pools. There aren't men's only version of those things. Why? Because it's assumed men will harass or ogle the women at those places. We're all just presumed to be guilty, so they kick us all out. Write up your best employee after he came in to help on his day off? Not my story, but recently happened to a friend of mine. Personal details omitted obviously. My buddy Steve has worked at a small business for over 10 years. Most of his time there has been pretty alright, but recently it has become a remarkably worse place to work. Steve is the most senior employee outside of management and by far the most productive. He's always training new hires, working extra hours, helping other departments, you name it. Pretty often, Steve will come in for a couple hours on his day off to take care of backed up paperwork and general housekeeping of his department. This does wonders for keeping the department running smoothly, especially when they are busy. Management knows about this and approves. Going into the holidays this year, they are absolutely slammed, as usual. Orders are backing up and it's all hands on deck, extra hours, full tilt. After another 60-hour work week, Steve has a couple days off. On his second day off, he decides to go into work for a few hours. He knows his coworkers are likely too busy to be taking care of the side stuff, so he's being a team player and helping out. While he's finishing up and about to leave, Steve's manager comes up to him and they have the following conversation. "Hey Steve, quit messing around, get back out there and do your job." Steve replies, "Hey manager, sorry, it's my day off, I'm not scheduled to work this shift. I'm just helping out, leaving in like 5 minutes." Manager replies, "The hell you are, get your ass out there." Steve says, "Nope, not happening. I'm going home." The next day, Steve is predictably brought into the office, dressed down, and written up for insubordination. But there's a few things about Steve that you should know, that his employers knew but either forgot or didn't care about. 1. Steve has been getting fed up with his employer for a while now. 2. Steve is quite financially stable, as he works in a high-demand industry, and his wife also has a fantastic well-paying job. 3. Steve is about to become a dad. In fact, he is very very close to becoming a dad, right after the holidays most likely. So, Steve is in the manager's office, just finished getting talked down to, and handed his write-up to sign. Steve signs his write-up, and hands it back, along with an envelope with a short letter inside. "What's this?" Manager asks. "My 2 weeks' notice." Cue the backpedaling. Manager is apologetic, asks for Steve to at least finish the holiday rush. Big boss comes in and offers a raise if he stays, the whole shebang. Steve turns it all down. Now Steve's former employer has to get through the holidays without their most reliable worker, which will take at least 2 or 3 new hires to cover. Meanwhile, Steve can enjoy the holidays without stress, help prepare for the arrival of their baby, and start looking for work again when they're good and ready. Edit. Obligatory. Wow, this post blew up reaction. Some clarification. Steve's position is hourly, and he got overtime pay for the extra hours. The stuff he worked on during these extra hours would collectively save his department a lot of time and headaches, that's why he did it. There used to be a good team vibe in the company from top to bottom, co-workers who were genuinely friends and good teammates, so going the extra mile made a good thing even better. Not so much towards the end. Also, giving his 2 weeks instead of quitting on the spot was a combination of professional courtesy and also giving his co-workers enough warning to not completely blindside and bury them. Leave me alone, little girl. Backstory, I'm 15F. My parents divorced a year ago because my father banged another woman. He married the affair girlfriend instantly. I think he's a complete jerk and told the judge I wanted to live with my mom, so I do, but they still said I had to go to my father's every other weekend. I didn't want to see him, so I refused to go at first, but it was stressing my mom out with court stuff. I agreed to go as long as his wife is hands off and I can stay in my room and not be bothered except for one family activity of their choice. So that's where we are. Every other weekend, my dad picks me up, talks at me in the car because I won't talk to him. We go to family therapy where everyone but me talks, and I stay in my room until sometime Saturday when I go out with them to do something fun, and then mostly stay in my room until my mom picks me up on Sunday. I have plenty of stuff to keep me busy, so I'm fine, but everyone else not so much. The affair's wife has kids that would go to their dads on my weekends, so I never saw them, but the schedule changed, so now they're there when I am. The 9-year-old boy is cool. He asks to borrow a video game now and then, but he's polite about it and gives them back, so sure. The 12-year-old girl, my stepsister, won't leave me alone. Anytime I don't have my door locked, she's barging and trying to talk to me or wanting to do something. I tried to tell her to leave me alone in a nice way, but last time I just up and told her I never want to talk to her and I'm going to ignore her from now on. She cried about it, the affair wife got mad, and my father said she was having a hard time with a divorce too and I shouldn't take it out on her. I told him he could stop forcing me to visit then and the problem was solved. Everyone is mad. My mom says she gets it, but the 12-year-old girl probably is just looking for someone, not her parents to talk to. I just don't see why it has to be me. Verdict, NTA. Edit. Okay, after thinking about it for a few days, here's what I'm going to do. A lot of people suggested letting them have it in therapy. So, tomorrow I'm turning into an unskippable cutscene in therapy. They want me to talk, so I've got a whole filibuster planned if I need it and no one else is getting a word in edgewise. My father will be addressed as cheater and a fair wife as adulteress from now on. If that doesn't get me dropped off back at my mom's, when the other two kids get to the house they are going to be told everything about the cheating. I'm rewriting the lyrics to a catchy song to be about my cheating father so I can sing it at him and get it stuck in his head if needed. Guess we'll see if that works better than ignoring them. Edit number 2, it's been an intense weekend y'all. I dropped all the nukes in therapy. My father nearly got kicked out of the session. He was big mad but he wouldn't let me go home. As soon as the kids got to the house, I caught the stepsister and apologized for snapping at her and told her I had just been on edge a lot since her mom and my dad cheated and that's why everyone broke up. She didn't know, so she started crying and yelled at her mom and all hell broke loose. I left out the rest for reasons, but my mom came to get me, the cops got involved, and it turns out the affair wife said she would divorce my father if he brought me back to their house anyway, so at least for right now I can stay at my mom's. I guess what happens next depends on what the court says, but I had to go talk to some people yesterday about what happened, plus I was able to record some of it so I don't necessarily know. I hope it's enough for me to be free. Leave me alone, little girl. I'm free. It's been like a month and I see a lot of people want an update. I had to do less screen time for a while on doctor's orders, so I'm finally back. I don't want to post an update on Am I the A-hole because I'd have to censor it a lot because of what happened. First, I'm free, I don't have to go back again, woo. So, the thing I couldn't say on my update to my post was things got physical after I dropped the nuclear option. Adulteress went off the rails and pushed me against the wall and slapped me really hard. She has nails, so it ended up cutting my face kinda deep and the cuts bled like crazy and I hit my head on the wall. I had put my phone on record and stuffed it in my sports bra band when I heard them start yelling for me to come downstairs, so I got the audio for the whole thing. Cheater realized they screwed up, I guess, so while he was pulling her off me I ran and locked myself in the bathroom and sent the recording and a picture of my face to my mom. Mom was the one that called the cops and she showed up right after they did. They let me go with her and one escorted us to the ER and I had to get a few stitches and answer a bunch of questions. My mom is super chill, but she was the maddest I have ever seen her. I had a little bit of a concussion, so I wasn't supposed to read or be on my phone a lot. I know my mom told the cops she wanted to press charges on adultery, but I don't know what's happening with that now. My mom says the custody situation is fixed for now, I'm with her full time. Cheaters can ask to visit me but I don't have to, and adulteresses aren't allowed to have any contact with me at all. To which Cheater said that was fine because she didn't want me at the house anymore anyway. I had to talk to some social workers and a lawyer, and I think adulteress may be in trouble about her own kids too, but I don't know. So that's what happened. Had to start school with a cut up face, but my mom's a no problem and she said they'll heal up without a scar if we take care of them. And I don't have to see Cheater anymore. Since the kid's dad teaches at my school and I have to take a class he teaches before I graduate, my mom met with him and the principal and I gave her the 9-year-old's game and a bracelet with a note for the 12-year-old to give to him so he could pass them on if he wanted. Probably won't see them again. I'm feeling a lot better now that I can stay home. Now I can get on with life.
My fiancé made me get plastic surgery just to get engaged. Now I want to call off the wedding. I 26 have been engaged to my fiancé 37 for 6 months now, and we're getting married next spring. Our relationship has not been easy and we dated for 2 years before getting engaged and he broke up with me once in between for 5 months. Right now I am so conflicted. There was a time I was so eager to be engaged to him and now I'm lost. First off, I kind of had to give an ultimatum to get engaged, to which he responded he has not proposed all this time because of something in my looks that he's not attracted to. He asked me to get a specific plastic surgery to correct this issue and that he would pay for it, and only then he's willing to get engaged. So, I went ahead and got the surgery and we got engaged just like he said. I can still tell he's not that attracted to me because the surgery didn't really make a big difference. He doesn't compliment me, doesn't really touch me, or initiate things with me. He doesn't complain or bash my looks but doesn't rave about it either. But this isn't the worst of it. I am currently in grad school while he works full-time and makes over $500K/year. He is paying for the wedding and has rubbed it in my face on 2 occasions about how I contribute nothing and that I basically never have the right to complain about anything ever because he works so hard to pay for things. I complained once that I feel we don't spend enough quality time. I just don't know if I'm making a huge mistake getting married to him. I don't want to be miserable. I am so anxious. I don't feel like he loves me. He pushes me away when he's having a bad day and doesn't talk to me. I just feel kind of neglected in the relationship, but I also don't want to be a victim and consider maybe he's right about some things. Breaking an engagement off is so embarrassing, and this would be his second broken engagement and I don't want to do that to him. With the first one, he said his ex-fiancée became too obsessed with the wedding planning and felt like a different personality of hers had come out after she secured the ring. I just feel really lost. How do I go about this? Update: he picked me up because we had our engagement photo shoot today. He has been depressed for over a month now over a real estate lawsuit that he started. He has already been putting me on the back burner because of this lawsuit and gives me zero attention. He acts like I am an added stressor in his life. So I'm already fed up with the mopey attitude. He starts going off about how he's not in the mood to take pictures today and that it's hard for him to smile, how drained and unhappy he feels over the house. I literally exploded. With everything that's happened, I couldn't take it anymore. I told him I've never met such a literal man-child in my life. For him to break down over a lawsuit he started, he is not fit to ever be the man, the sole provider of a family, to face real troubles of life. He has never had any real issues in his life. He is a literal man-child. I told him he never acknowledged how insane it is that I went and got surgery just for him to find me more attractive. He never recognized the care and sacrifices I've made for him. I did take ownership for letting this relationship drag out as far as an engagement, after he showed me time after time how unfit he is to be a life partner. It is my fault. I ignored the red flags and I kept having hope he would change one day. Maybe if I brought him a child he would start to appreciate me more, maybe seeing me as a mother he would start to love me. I am so glad it didn't last long enough to find out. We didn't make it to the shoot obviously, he ended up driving me back home. His reaction throughout all of this was very minimal. So cold. He would look down and look sad, but it looked like he was pretending. He said he was sorry and he thought I deserved better than him. He said his emotional battery had run out. This was the end of it. I gave him the ring back and told him we're never speaking again.
What's the most inspiring thing you've witnessed a family member do? My baby sister, Tina. She was a troubled teenager. Dropped out of high school. Causing problems with our brothers and giving grief to our parents. She got a job and hooked up with a guy, and was expecting a baby before she even turned 18. They got married and shortly after she had her daughter, she was pregnant and had her son. With 2 children, no education and no decent job, living on the verge of poverty because her husband was making minimum wage, barely sufficient to survive on. Well, Tina quickly realized she made some wrong turns in her life. And once she figured that out, she kept hinting to her sisters that she'd like to go back to school so she could improve her standard of living for her and her kids. In all honesty, I was skeptical she could pull that off, because I knew firsthand how hard it was for me to just finalize my college and I was almost finished when I got married. All I had left was 2 exams and still it was a huge struggle for me. However, I said yes, I'll pay for it, if you're sure you want that and you can do that. I didn't want to be the one who didn't help her, or shattered her dreams by rejecting my help. To everyone's surprise, Tina completed her high school, by passing the remaining exams and getting a diploma. She got into a private college. She picked IT as her field of choice. Never knew she even liked that field. She graduated from college in time, and with really good grades. Did she stop there? No, she continued her studies, she got her master's degree and numerous additional courses, and she never stops working on herself, improving her odds. Meanwhile, she got not just 1, but 2 good-paying jobs. She constantly gets calls and offers of companies reaching out to her, with job offers. She takes care of her family and her kids have become quite independent and ambitious, too. She makes me so proud of her and her achievement, because I know she overcame a lot to get where she is right now. And I am so happy with myself that I said yes to her, when she asked for help. It has been a great investment indeed. I helped her for a while, but now I don't have to worry about her or her family. I know they are taken care of and that's quite a relief. The Legend of Psycho Santa. This is a story of revenge that went too far. Back in 2002, I was working as evening manager of a cigar shop in a shopping center. We had a lounge with overstuffed chairs for customers to hang out and enjoy a cigar or a pipe. There was a group of regulars that used the lounge, some once or twice a week, some every evening. There was a guy we'll call Todd who came in periodically. He wasn't quite a regular, but the guys all treated him like part of the crew. He was not quite right. He was in his early 30s, lived with his parents, and drifted from one part-time job to the next. He was on par with Forrest Gump in terms of intelligence, and we suspected he had some mental health diagnoses. When the Christmas season started, he got a gig standing outside of Home Depot dressed as Santa. I think he was collecting donations. A couple of teenagers drove by, and the kid in the passenger seat leaned out and whipped a handful of pennies at him. They drove away laughing. It turned out we were right about Todd's mental health. Remember, Todd was dressed as Santa when this happened. There were families in those cars waiting in line, with children. I didn't witness it, but I talked to people who did. The general consensus was that it was funny for the first few moments, but quickly turned horrifying and went rapidly downhill from there. Todd took off after them on foot. It was a busy day for the shopping center, and there was a long line of cars waiting to get out, so he easily caught up with them. He took them completely by surprise, and started by yanking open the driver's door and dragging him out of the truck. The passenger tried to come to his friend's aid, but Todd had knocked the driver out by the time he came around the back. Todd grabbed the other kid, kicked him in the groin 3 or 4 times, then dragged him over and started slamming the driver's side door on his head again and again. Once they were both laying on the ground, he just kept kicking them until finally a couple of guys took him down and managed to keep him pinned. Police showed up pretty quickly with an ambulance not far behind. The kids were taken to the emergency room. Both were in bad shape, with broken ribs, damaged teeth and concussions. One of the Good Samaritans got a nasty bite wound and also got taken to the ER. Todd was held in the county lockup pending trial. I guess his parents either didn't have the money to bail him out or were scared shitless to have him come home. Todd's case was handled by a special mental health court. They took into account the fact that he was provoked, and he, somehow, had a clean record. He only got a few more months in jail, then got transferred to a long-term inpatient psychiatric treatment facility. He was also permanently banned from the shopping center.
What is the saddest thing you have seen a parent do to their child? Made her unaliver. The case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard has been around for quite some time, and it's one of the saddest cases of child abuse I know. In a recent photo of Gypsy Rose, she has a huge smile. But notice her clothes. She's dressed in the khaki outfit of a female prisoner. If you didn't know her story, you'd never guess she's serving a 10-year jail sentence. Gypsy grew up with her mother in Missouri. She was just like any other kid, full of life and by all appearances, normal. By the time she turned 8, however, she had to move around in a wheelchair and was fed via feeding tube. Her mother Dee Dee claimed that she was suffering from a myriad of illnesses, like leukemia, muscular dystrophy, vision impairments, hearing impairments and seizures. As she grew older, she was diagnosed with other conditions and was under the care of her mother 24/7. She soon became a minor local celebrity due to her illnesses, and many charities contributed to help support both mother and child. She went around to give inspirational talks. Their frequent travels wasn't all work. She was also given holiday trips by charities such as the Make-A-Wish Foundation. As she grew older, Gypsy started to feel like something wasn't right. Dee Dee never let her out of her sight and punished her physically when she tried to escape. Gypsy eventually tried to connect to the outside world through the internet, where she created an online dating profile. She met her first boyfriend Nicholas Gottajohn online, and dated via the internet for 2.5 years. When they finally met in person, Dee Dee took an instant dislike to Gottajohn. She became jealous of the affection Gypsy was showing him. It soon came to a point where Gypsy had enough, and hatched a plan with her boyfriend to unalive Dee Dee. Gottajohn unalived Dee Dee in June 2015 and Gypsy ran away with him. After a few carefree days, they were arrested. Yet what people were shocked by was not the planned unalive, it was how Gypsy was found. She was walking, able to eat and talk normally, a far cry from the sickly, wheelchair-bound girl she was known to be. It was later found that she did not have any of the ailments Dee Dee claimed she had. She was kept prisoner by her mother and forced to use a wheelchair even though she could walk. She took pills that she did not need and even had multiple surgeries for the conditions her mother made up. She was essentially a prop used by her mother and never had any say in her own life. Unalive is not the right way to escape, but Gypsy didn't think she had any other choice. The young couple were both given lengthy sentences, yet Gypsy is happier in prison compared to the prison her whole life has been. She has friends and normal social interactions, and is even working for her GED. In her own words, the prison that I was living in before, with my mom, it's like, I couldn't walk. I couldn't eat. I couldn't have friends. I couldn't go outside, and play with friends or anything, Gypsy said. Over here, I feel like I'm freer in prison than with living with my mom. Because now, I'm allowed to just live like a normal woman. Every time I read something about this case, it just breaks my heart. No one should ever be made to live like this. Emotional abuse hurts just as much as physical abuse, and a combination of both must have been unbearable. Saddest story about a parent and child? This certainly qualifies.
A customer wanted her ice cream crunchy, so I made it crunchy. I worked as a manager at an ice cream store. One night as I was scooping ice cream, I heard a customer getting annoyed at the window and starting to get snippy with one of the young kids who was working the window, so I head over to smooth the situation as manager. The woman is mad because the hot fudge on her hot fudge sundae is hot. I explain to her that hot fudge is indeed served hot, but she insists, so I make her a new sundae with cold hot fudge instead and let her keep the hot fudge one. I didn't really know what she wanted, so I just made her one with regular chocolate syrup. By the time I return with that, this customer was stirring her spoon through another cup of cream ice she ordered, obviously about to complain about it. The flavor she ordered was called Graham Crunch, and she proceeded to tell me that the ice cream isn't crunchy, that she orders this flavor all the time, and she knows what crunchy ice cream is supposed to be like. I tell her that this is just how the flavor and that there isn't crunchy ice cream, but she isn't having it. She wants me to fix it. We've got some crushed graham cracker topping in the back, so as she is berating me, I just walk away from her and grab the entire container and come back to the window with it. At this point, we've got a line of people down the block because this lady has held us up, so there are lots of witnesses to what I was about to do. Without breaking eye contact with her as she continues to complain, I open the lid of the container and empty the entire thing over her cup. Graham crackers are everywhere. Her ice cream is now definitely crunchy. She loses her mind at this and starts yelling at me she knows the owner and will get me fired. I tell her, yeah, Steve is a nice guy, and she responds with I've known Steve a long time, to which I respond, well, the owner's name is John, I'm Steve. Get out of here, and don't bother my employees for free ice cream again. Now sufficiently embarrassed in front of the long line of customers, the lady leaves in a huff and indeed never returns. The next customer left us a $20 tip in the jar. Will child-free people get lonely in old age without kids? Let me tell you a story. I have 2 sons. I love my boys more than anything. I have spent the last 20 or so years living my life around theirs, trying to support their interests, guide without controlling, accepting their challenges while celebrating their amazing individuality. On his 18th birthday, my older son talked to me on my way to bed. We laughed about some videos he'd been watching. Very normal chat. When my other son woke me a couple of hours later, my older son was gone, and I have not spoken to him since. It's been 6 months. He's alive and well and living in another state with some strangers. You probably think I'm leaving out the abuse or something. Nope. He just left. We got along great. No explanation, other than a short note that he wanted more independence, though, I never told him what to do, other than to go to school. By now, I've packed up his things. He's gone. I don't expect he'll come back. That period of my life is over. Another story, just a month or so before my son left, my mother died. I spent her last months with her, changing her diaper, feeding her. She'd had a stroke the day after I'd brought my sons to see her after learning she was ill. I spent the next 3 months or so alternating with my brother, caring for her. One of our brothers, who lived nearby, did nothing for her. One managed her financial affairs. We traveled there from different states and lived with her. My point is that, maybe, if you're really lucky, your kids will be there for you at the end. Be nice to them. It's the luck of the draw. Had my one brother been in charge, she'd have lived out her final days in a hospice, surrounded by strangers. Instead, I cooked her her favorite meals and watched Rocketman over and over with her for the first time. If you're having kids for any reason other than the experience of raising children, you're fooling yourself. They're not an investment. They're an experience. You should count yourself lucky if they call you now and then when they're adults. It's a crapshoot. I'd say focus on building friendships with people who will stick with you. Build a social life. Get involved in your community. If you want kids because they'll have to take care of you when you're old, save yourself a lot of expense and hassle and make some good friends instead. It's a better bet. Parents, what did you do to your child that they never forgave you for? I once punished my daughter for failing a class in high school. Now she is 25 and we haven't spoken in 8 years. My wife and I have always disagreed on how to raise our only daughter. She was a good kid, but my wife never believed in punishment and I felt like we were spoiling her whenever she made mistakes and went completely unpunished. Some examples being, when she would come home past curfew, when she would dress inappropriately, or when she would take a long time to answer her phone or respond to our texts. Like I said, my daughter was always a pretty good kid, but every time she screwed up and I wanted to ground her and take away her privileges, my wife would always convince me not to. This led to never-ending arguments with my wife, and when I look back on our marriage, I'm surprised we even managed to stay together this long, since we used to fight over our parenting styles so much. I love my daughter and I only ever wanted the best for her. When she was 17, I finally punished her in a way that made up for her years of unchecked mistakes, and she never forgave me for it. She has not spoken a word to me since that day 8 years ago. She and my wife are still close, but she has totally destroyed any relationship we once had. It happened during my daughter's junior year of high school. She was usually a straight A student, but I received a call one day informing me she was in trouble of failing her physics class. She had been turning in all her work on time but was still doing poorly on the exams. It came as a shock to me since my daughter had always gotten excellent grades. When she came home that day, I confronted her about her physics grade. To be fair, she was super busy her junior year and was often stressed since she had a loaded schedule with sports, clubs, and AP classes as well. So when she came home that day, I could tell she was in a tense mood, but I knew I needed to address her failing the class before she actually did. As soon as she walked in, I told her to sit down. She looked annoyed at me but took a seat at the table. When I started lecturing her about her physics grade, she told me she was struggling in class but she was still trying her best. I told her that sometimes her best isn't good enough, and she needed to get her poop together and make sure she passed this class. She got angry with me for my response, and screamed at me to please get off her back. As I said before, we never really punished my daughter harshly while she was growing up, and when she raised her voice at me like that, something inside me snapped and I realized she needed a reality check. My daughter had a part-time job for about a year at that point. She used her paychecks to buy her first car, a crappy little thing from Craigslist, but she loved it. I didn't know much about my daughter's life, but I knew she cared about that car. So that's the route I used to punish her. As soon as she walked upstairs after yelling at me, I went online and got a quote for junking the car. I scheduled to have it picked up and junked that afternoon, and about 2 hours after my daughter's little outburst, she got to watch a tow truck pull her beloved car out of the driveway. I stood in the driveway while the truck hooked up my daughter's car, and after a second my daughter ran outside to the driveway and asked what the hell was going on. I told her the truth. I said that she had been messing up at school and she would be paying the price after evading punishment her entire life. She was just crying and begging the confused tow truck driver to leave her car, but I paid him extra to get it out of there faster. My daughter then called my wife, who was at work, but she had her phone off. After we watched her car get pulled out of the driveway, my daughter turned to me and said, "F you." Those were the last words she ever said to me, 8 years ago. My wife tore me a new one when she got home that day, and ended up undermining me by buying my daughter a new car in the same week. It was ridiculous. Anyways, I ultimately don't regret what I did, even if it cost me my relationship with my daughter. She had to learn about the real world someday, and I know I did the right thing by being the only person in her family to show her that actions had consequences. My ex was convicted of redrum. I, 26, dated my ex, also 26, for 4 years starting junior year of high school. We were very serious, talked about marriage, and lived together at college for a year. At this point she decided to stay with her mom and older sister's family across the country for the summer. She'd done this before. As far as I knew, everything was fine, until she stopped responding to me halfway through the summer. Wouldn't respond to my texts, calls, nothing. I was worried sick for days, tried to contact her mom and sister, nothing. After 6 days of trying to reach her, she finally answered the phone, told me to F off and stop calling her, and hung up. I was completely blindsided and shocked. In hindsight, she had always been manipulative, selfish, and narcissistic, but at the time I hadn't realized all this. My family and friends all helped me realize how awful she was after the fact. To this day I don't have any idea why she dumped me after 4 years and why she did it so hostilely. The consensus of everyone close to me is that I was way better off without her. The things she put me through affected me a lot, and the remnants of the trauma she caused still pops up every now and then in my relationship with my wife. My wife is amazing and always understanding. Anyways, that's the backstory. Recently, a friend of mine sent me an article. It detailed how my ex had just been convicted of first-degree murder. She had a baby with her boyfriend, they broke up, and she got him to give her full custody. She refused to let him see the kid, so he hired a lawyer to try to get partial custody. She wanted the baby completely to herself, so she bought a gun at a gun show, had a friend drive her to the baby daddy's house, and when he came to the door, shot him in the face. She had bragged to a coworker that she was going to just claim self-defense and wouldn't get in any trouble. Obviously that wasn't the case. The gun registered to her was found a block away matching the casing at the scene. She had no alibi, and the friend that drove her testified against her, not knowing about her plan to kill the baby daddy. The jury took all of 2 hours including lunch to return a guilty verdict. She faces up to life with no parole. My wife's response to me telling her about all this happening was, "Well, I guess you dodged a bullet." This is potentially the funniest thing I've ever heard, and I love her very much. Some people are bad people and sometimes nothing bad ever happens to them. In this case, she finally met with consequences to her actions. It's only unfortunate that someone had to die and a child will never know their father for her to get what she deserves in life. I got kicked out of a clinic because I thought I was getting compliments on my SS. Post-lockdown, my local laser hair removal clinic had this massive sale going on. I figured, why not? It was time for me to embrace the hairless life. I'm a gay guy, and I had an upcoming date that I wanted to be perfectly groomed for, so I decided to treat myself. After all, who doesn't want to feel smooth and confident on a date, right? I paid for the 10-session package and went in for the first one. I was a bit nervous but also pretty stoked about my future smooth self. I decided to go all in and get a full Brazilian, from front to back. The super nice nurse comes in and gives me a quick rundown of the procedure. Then she leaves the room so I can undress. When she comes back, we start with lasering the hair around my back door. All good so far. Her instructions are, lay on your right side, and use your left hand to pull up your bum cheek. So there I am, lying on my side, gripping my cheek, while this lady's got a laser next to my private areas. Now, on my left hand, I've got this really cool silver ring with a bright blue gem. It was handmade by my best friend, so it's pretty unique and eye-catching. It seems like the nurse noticed my ring too, and to break the ice, she said, "That's a cute ring you have there." My brain short-circuited. I completely forgot I was wearing the ring and thought she was talking about my butthole. I blurted out, "Thank you. It'll be a lot nicer when you make it hairless though." The nurse blinked a few times, trying to make sense of what I just said. She let out a nervous laugh, and then there was this incredibly awkward silence. I could see her face turning red, and that's when it hit me. She was not talking about my rear end. I tried to apologize, stammering, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you were talking about my actual ring. I thought you meant. You know." The nurse's expression shifted from embarrassed to annoyed. "I don't think that's an appropriate joke to make in this situation," she said, her voice tense. "I'm trying to maintain a professional atmosphere here, and your comment crossed a line." I was mortified. I didn't mean it as a joke, I insisted. It was a misunderstanding. "I'm so sorry." But she wasn't having it. "I'm sorry, but I can't continue the session under these circumstances," she said, her voice firm. "You need to leave." Feeling that her reaction was a bit extreme, I tried to explain myself further. "Look, I'm really sorry, it was just a misunderstanding. I'm gay, and I didn't mean anything inappropriate by it," I said, hoping that my honesty would help diffuse the situation. Her expression hardened, and she became even angrier. "Your sexual orientation doesn't excuse making inappropriate comments," she snapped. "It doesn't matter who you're attracted to, there's a time and a place for that kind of humor, and this is not it. You still need to leave." I quickly got dressed, feeling like a total idiot. I tried to apologize again as I left the room, but she just shook her head and directed me towards the exit. As I walked back to my car, my face burning with embarrassment, I couldn't believe what had just happened. I'd managed to make things incredibly awkward in a matter of seconds, and now I was getting kicked out of the clinic with my hair removal only half done. The next day, I canceled the 10-session package.
His reaction to a photo of me 35 pounds heavier surprised me. A few months ago, I started seeing this wonderful guy. From the moment we met, our chemistry was undeniable. He's the kind of person I've always dreamed about. He's kind-hearted, has a great sense of humor, treats me with utmost respect, and our connection is electric. He's everything I was looking for and more. Our connection isn't only emotional, we also enjoy the pleasure of each other's company, exploring different cuisines and eateries around the town. It's a ritual we look forward to every week, dining out at least once or twice, indulging in appetizers, main courses, desserts, and the occasional drink. We also love the tradition of our leisurely breakfasts the morning after. It's safe to say our foodie adventures have contributed to my gaining a few pounds over the past couple of months, perhaps somewhere around 6 to 10. Today, as we were reminiscing about our culinary escapades, I jokingly mentioned that I've gained some weight. However, I also confidently asserted, it's a good thing I look good at different weights, whether it's 120, 140, or 170. His eyes widened at the mention of 170. 170? No way you've ever been 170, he exclaimed, clearly taken aback. I pulled up a photo from 2019 when I was indeed at that weight. He looked at the picture, and I was taken aback by his reaction. His gaze was filled with awe, and I could see a certain sparkle in his eyes. He seemed so excited, and he enthusiastically asked to see more photos of me at that weight. He even jokingly asked if I had any exposed ones, which made me burst out laughing. His response stunned me, but in a good way. So often, I felt the pressure to be small, to conform to certain societal standards of beauty, but his reaction was a breath of fresh air. It reminded me that it's okay not to be teeny tiny and that my worth is not defined by my size. His acceptance and admiration for me at all stages made me feel safe, loved, and truly appreciated. His reaction was not only unexpected but also an affirmation of my self-worth, making me realize that I am enough just as I am. It was an empowering moment, a gentle reminder to embrace myself fully, at every weight and every stage.
My wife cheated on me with one of my employees. Background: I met my now wife 12 years ago when I was in college. When we met, we instantly clicked. She is a beautiful and smart woman. She is so wonderful to be around. She is the love of my life and I'm so distraught by this. We have been together almost for 10 years and happily married for around 6 years. Our relationship has always been healthy. I never thought there were any issues until now. We always communicated our feelings and hardly argued, and when we did we would calmly discuss it. I've been a business owner for around 7 years now. It's a small software repairman store. It's a pretty small business, but it makes money. Around a year ago, I hired John, a chill employee. Now I want to say I'm not a bad-looking guy. I'm roughly 6'2" and leaning more towards the lean side. I don't have a hideous face, but I'm not extremely attractive. John is roughly 6 feet 0 inches and is slightly on the bulky side. He is one of those guys you wouldn't want your wife to see. He is extremely attractive. When my wife met with John for the first time, she acted very strange around him. She was even a little flustered to be around him. I brushed it off as me overanalyzing it. However, my wife came into work more and more often. When she came, she would put on makeup and dress up. For context, my wife hardly dresses up. I found this a little suspicious, but again brushed it off as me being paranoid. John would talk and even flirt with my wife when I was around. He was also extra with her. I again brushed this off as jealously. Last month, my wife came into work to bring me lunch. She brought 2 lunches, which I thought was strange. I asked her about it and she said, I thought I would pack 2 just in case John wanted some too. I thought this was a little weird and asked her why she would do that, because he isn't her boyfriend and didn't need her to pack him a lunch. I can see my words were a bit much, but it just made me uncomfortable. She blew up at me and told me to stop being jealous. She told me that John was a very good person and friend, that he deserved the lunch more than I did. I felt a little hurt by her words, but apologized anyways. She asked me where he was and stormed into the break room where he was nowhere to be found. After I told her he was sick, she scoffed and left in a huff. I didn't get my lunch that day. This whole situation felt a little strange to me, so I decided to do some digging. I know it was wrong, but I went through her phone when she was asleep. I found out that she and John had been seeing each other for around 7 months now. My heart broke. It still is. This woman that I loved and trusted, who I had been with for 10 years, had just thrown it all away for some guy she only knew for barely a year. I scrolled through the messages. Each one broke my heart a little more than the last. They had been making fun of me and everything, exchanging photos and planning dates. I didn't know what to do or where to even start. So I took a bunch of screenshots and sent it to myself. This was all around a week and a half ago, and I'm still in shock. I don't know what to do. I want to confront her or something. However, I still love her and don't want to leave her. I don't know what to do.
My parents chose my rapist over me. My parents took the guy who intimately assaulted me to breakfast. A few years ago I, 23, was intimately assaulted by my best friend, 25, Lee. He and my husband, we were just dating at the time, lived together and they were best friends, which is how we became friends. I had spent the night. I got a little drunk and they convinced me that it was okay if we all slept in the same bed. Even drunk me was against this. When I woke up the next morning, I found Lee grabbing me and putting his hand where it shouldn't be. I froze. It was terrifying. Especially with my husband lying asleep right next to me. Fast forward, they are no longer friends and don't live together. My parents didn't understand what happened, so I told them the truth. Exactly what happened. I think they thought I was lying. This isn't the first time this has happened to me actually. And I've told them about the other time as well. Ironically, a very similar story but with an ex. A year goes by, and my husband and I have a house. This house is near the center of our small town, which has a fair and go-kart races every year on the streets. It goes right in front of our house. My parents usually work the races to help out. Unfortunately, so does Lee. We were working at the intersection right in front of our house. When I went to say hi to my other family that was sitting on my porch, I saw my dad and mom getting out of their truck, and what I saw next tore me to shreds. It was Lee, getting out of the truck. I asked my mom why she would take the man who broke me out to breakfast. She didn't give me a real answer. I had the most amount of panic attacks that day. My husband was gone for the weekend as he was in the National Guard, so I was alone, with family that didn't support me. My dad always said he would hurt someone if they ever did anything to me. But here he was, taking him out to breakfast, like old pals. I told them later that day how it bothered me and they told me I should just get over it. Now every year my husband and I leave the house and do something fun. I still love my parents, but I don't think I could ever forgive them for that.
Am I the jerk for telling my housemate to tell his girlfriend to shut up? I, 23, am renting a house with 3 other guys. One of the housemates regularly has his girlfriend, 21, over. Outside of the issue at hand, she's fun, is a creative cook, and seems to be very caring. From what I've gathered, she has a difficult home situation, which is why she bunks at our place 3 to 4 nights out of the week. This housemate works remotely and I work the day shift. Everyone else works the night shift, so it's usually just me, the housemate, and his girlfriend home at night, so I don't think the others know that this has been happening. His girlfriend has anxiety. This results in what I think are panic attacks that last for hours, and they always happen after midnight. Crying, sometimes screaming, sometimes stomping around the house, pounding on walls. The first several nights it happened, I asked if there was any way I could help, but there isn't. I've tried headphones, melatonin, anything to help myself sleep through the screaming/crying/raging. It happens 2 to 4 nights a week and has been going on for 2 months now. I'm honestly beginning to struggle at work because I'm so unbelievably tired some days. I fell asleep in my car, parked at the house after work, last week unintentionally. My stomach is a mess because I'm pounding coffee and energy shots. One night last week I slept in the concrete basement because it was quieter. Last night she went from 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. At that point I had already been awake for 48 hours, not entirely due to her. I had to take my mother to the hospital unexpectedly the night before. I couldn't think straight and was starting to feel physically ill from exhaustion. I texted my housemate and said, take her to the hospital for help or tell her to shut up because I can't sleep and I have to be at work in 3 hours. I am not proud of my wording and I did apologize. His response was, she'll be done soon, quit being an insensitive prick. He also told the other housemates in our group chat that I was being oppressive to his girlfriend while she's struggling. The others are not sure who the jerk is in this situation, me for how I worded my text or him for calling me a jerk for it, or how to address it. She needs help and I need sleep, so I understand the dilemma, but am I the jerk?
My disrespectful husband bought a 9K car for our surrogate, so I confronted him, but he accused me of being jealous sterile. I and my husband Hunter suffered from fertility problems. We recently decided to get a surrogate who's a friend of a friend. We were busy getting everything done legally. We already had a contract in place. My egg was used, so no worries in this regard. Our surrogate is a respectful, kind woman who's been keeping her part of the contract intact, but it's Hunter who's starting to act strange. I've noticed that he's been focusing his all attention on our surrogate, like skipping work to visit her or get her things she didn't ask for, chatting with her all the time on social media, and also constantly offering to do things for her like drive her places and sometimes even invite her out, or offer to repair stuff for her. She complained to me about this and even told me about things he's been doing that I didn't even know about, like bringing her gifts. I tried speaking to him about what this looks like, but he said that he's doing what he's doing for his son and not her. Still, I asked that he tone it down and respect the woman's space. He got mad at me and accused me of being jealous of the woman who's carrying my own child and said that this makes me look bad. I said our surrogate was the one who complained about his behavior and he said that this wasn't true. Apparently, this made him somewhat angry, so I gave him time to cool down a bit. Yesterday, our surrogate called me saying that Hunter came over and told her guest to leave. I asked why and she said he wanted to show her the 9K car he bought for her. I was shocked. She said she declined the car and asked him to leave, but he started arguing with her about using public transportation and risking our baby's well-being. I was fuming. I called him demanding he get home and he did eventually. Once he got back, I picked up a fight with him and yelled at him, saying that he's been nothing but overstepping, disrespectful, and inappropriate towards our surrogate. Again, he explained the car wasn't for her but to ensure that the baby was safe. I told him to stop disrespecting the woman and stop using the baby as an excuse to stomp all over her boundaries. He ranted about how he was just trying to make this work and that I should do the same if not more. He even accused me of not loving our son as much as he does, but this isn't the way, and that I am just a jealous sterile. He left the house and refused to speak to me. My husband smashed our daughter's new phone because it was distracting her, so I took money from his account to replace it. Now he won't speak to me. My daughter is 16. She had her old phone for 5 years and always wanted a new one. I'm the only one working right now since my husband decided to take a break after he inherited some money from his dad. I saw that she did pretty well at school despite having mental health issues that had gotten in the way of her focus before, so I kept her encouraged and rewarded her with an Apple iPhone that cost a reasonable sum of money. I did my best to save money to buy it. I skipped paying for breakfast at work to afford it, and my husband didn't want to help, so I was on my own. I bought her the iPhone and have yet to see her this happy. It was refreshing for me because she went through some hard times in the past couple of years, emotionally and mentally. My husband was upset with this. He said the iPhone would only distract her from school and chores, but that wasn't true. It encouraged her to do more, but he still said I shouldn't have spent that kind of money on an iPhone that she might be irresponsible with and break. My daughter noticed his attitude toward the iPhone, but I told her to ignore him. Days ago, I found out that he had broken the iPhone. I asked why, and he said he asked her to get him something from the toolbox in the garage, but she was on the iPhone and ignored him. He used this incident as evidence that the iPhone was a bad influence, but I yelled at him and demanded he replace it. He said he wouldn't, so I took money out of his account, paid for a new iPhone, and gave it to my daughter. He saw what I did and went off on me, calling me vicious and awful, and accused me of stealing his father's money and demanded the money I took. every single penny back. I told him it wouldn't happen, and he got his mother on me, saying I was setting a terrible example for my daughter by getting her a phone paid for, with money that I stole from her dad. My husband said he wouldn't speak to me until I fixed this, but I already said I owe him nothing. That's what he did. My daughter told me that she was in the living room when he was fixing the faucet, and he shouted for her to get him something from the toolbox he keeps in the garage. My daughter wasn't wearing earphones or anything, so she heard him. Still, she responded to him asking for a minute because she was finishing a text to her best friend to ask about homework, but before she could even send it, he snatched the iPhone from her hand, smashed it, and started scolding her. Our financial situation has never been good either, but I have been considering taking space for a while. He and I have been having issues. Now it's gotten to my daughter. I'm aware and won't let it continue.
Employees of Walmart, what is the weirdest thing you've ever seen at work? A few years back, I worked at Walmart as an assistant manager. I was working a 12p 10p shift and the overnight manager called off sick, so I stayed until 4 a.m. so somebody working mornings could come in early and we could have it covered. Anyway, it was February in northern Illinois. The temp outside at 2 a.m. was about 6 degrees. At about 2:30, I get a call over the walkie-talkie to come up to the pharmacy and that you've got to see this. I went up to pharmacy and see two younger guys. One was dressed in a lifeguard's outfit complete with a thick coating of sunscreen on his nose. The other one was dressed in a complete walrus costume. I half followed these guys through the store to make sure that they weren't going to do something stupid like pull fire alarms, etc., and caught up with what everybody was doing stocking shelves. I lost contact with them because they weren't bothering anybody, and just went about my business. About a half hour later, I made my way up to the front registers and asked the cashier if she had seen the lifeguard and the walrus. She said that not only did she see them, but they made a purchase. The lifeguard found some sunscreen in the clearance aisle, and the walrus got a pack of salmon from the seafood department. They paid with cash, and went on their way.
I just overheard my husband of 35 years declare his love to someone else. I am sitting on my couch for 10 minutes away from my 60th birthday. Today my husband of 35 years and I were at the doctor and he has to begin tests because the doctor thinks he might have cancer. It has been an emotional day. He was outside on the porch and I could hear him talking. I wondered who he was talking to because no one else was here except his dad who was in his bedroom, so I listened. I heard him say stuff like, "I love you more than anything, you are my soulmate, but we can't start our life together until I know if I have cancer or not because I don't want to burden you with that." He went on to say when his biopsy appointment was and again stating how much he loved this person. He has never declared his undying love to me or ever referred to me as his soulmate, so I was a bit confused at first and then I realized what I was hearing. We take care of his 87-year-old dad and he lives with us. I love his dad and have no problem caring for him for the rest of his life, but that won't happen. We have grown kids, some local and some far away. I am just so confused on how he is planning on starting his new life. Is he taking his dad with him? Is he planning on making me leave? We have stuff planned like trips and things. My head is just spinning, but I guess I am not totally shocked out of the blue. 10 years ago I stumbled upon his adult friend finder profile, so I made up a profile of my own and started talking with him, and he was making plans, with me, to hook up with who he was talking to, me, but he thought I was someone else. I confronted him and it took some work, but we worked things out. Couple of months ago I walked past his Kindle and see there is a webcam on, so I looked at it and its website was Adult Friend Finder. I chose not to confront him then and just let it slide. I know that was stupid, but we all have health issues and things that keep us busy. I just didn't have the energy for another confrontation and all that it entails. So I sit here now wondering what to do next. Do I shut my mouth and sit back and watch how this plays out? It is tempting to watch him lie and cheat and not know that I know. It could be interesting. Or do I go into the bedroom where he is now sleeping and open this can of life-changing bullshit tea and tell him what I know? Do I sleep on it and confront him in the morning? I am the person who will do anything to not rock the boat. The less I am noticed, the better I feel. I have been let down by every man in my life, starting with my alcoholic, abusive, and always father, to every boyfriend and my first husband to now my current husband. The only male in my life who has wrecked me is my son. So I guess I will shut up now. I can't call my kids or family or even my girlfriends yet. It is too soon, but I need to dump him. Update: I made it through the night without sleeping and without beating him over the head, but I fell asleep and woke up screaming and he asked what was wrong and it all came out. We are done. Who goes where is yet to be determined, but the marriage is over and right now I am so exhausted I am okay with that.
What's the most depressing meal you've eaten? When I was 19, after my ex left me broken and homeless, I used every penny I had left and put down a rent deposit on a run-down, spider-infested, cold and dirty one-room apartment. I had no furniture and was sleeping on the dusty, wooden floor on a pile of towels in below freezing temperatures, while wearing layers upon layers of clothes, gloves and a woolly hat just to keep warm. More difficult than you'd think, as this was in early January in North Scotland. At that time, I was working at a fast food restaurant and received one small but free meal on my half-hour break at 2 a.m. I worked 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. 6 days a week. For the first 3 weeks, I lived in this flat where a free burger was the only cooked meal I would have. On my days off I'd tend to buy anything I could afford from the local store when they reduced items to pennies at the end of the day prior to closing, usually past its sell-by date, and disgusting things such as a squished bar of chocolate or mushy tomatoes. My last day off work right before I would finally be paid my crappy month's wage was the worst. I woke up at 9 p.m. as usual and just laid in the dark on the floor. All I could think of was how hungry and helpless I was. At around 2 a.m. when I would usually get food at my work, the hunger was becoming unbearable and no amount of cold water from the tap was diminishing it. I raided through all my jackets and bags still in cardboard boxes around the apartment in the hopes of finding something, anything, that could help. And that is where I found my most depressing meal. A sachet of curry sauce from the restaurant. I cried while squeezing the 25 milliliters condiment into my mouth and crawled back onto the towels to lay there until I could go back to work 19 hours later. I am now 22 and have a house with the love of my life, who I met at the same time I moved into that apartment. Every night I come home from a 9 to 5 office job, to a warm home and a soft bed, and I get to cook lovely homely meals for us both. Every day I remember the conditions I survived through and made the best of. Because of that experience and others I had living there, I'm always appreciative of the life I have now and the work it took to get here. I met my celebrity crush, and I totally blew any chance of being with her. So, I'm not gonna say her name because I don't want this to make any headlines lol. She's a singer, not super famous, but still has a pretty big fan base. Like, whenever someone asks who my favorite artist is, I tell her name and I have to explain who she is every single time. Yet she does have more than 1 million subscribers on Instagram. I'm 27, and I've been a huge fan of hers for the past 4 or 5 years. Maybe her biggest fan. Before that I didn't have any celebrity crushes. I remember that everyone had one in my teenage years, however I never really understood how you would get so obsessed over someone you've never met. I understood it with her. I know her every single song, I must have watched every show she's been on, every interview she's given. I love her music, and I love her personality, well, at least how she presents herself in those interviews. She's beautiful and has the kindest heart. Anyways, so a few weeks ago I was abroad for business-related reasons. After a long day of work in a small office, I wanted to walk to my hotel to get some fresh air. On my way there, I saw a bar. It seemed like a quiet place, so even though I was very tired, I went in to see what kinds of beers they had. I like trying different beers whenever I travel. I sat down and ordered one, and started mindlessly scrolling on my phone so I wasn't alone with my thoughts, as you do when you're sitting at a bar alone. After ordering my second beer, someone said hi. I turned around, and saw her. Like, don't get me wrong, I've met women at bars before, but never had a woman come up to me first, so that was new, and it was her of all people. Her. So of course I thought I must have fallen asleep on my desk at work and I was dreaming. I was freaking out, internally. Externally, I managed to keep my cool, and said hi back. Since I couldn't believe who's standing in front of me, it was more like a hi? I guess. She said she saw me sitting alone, and she was alone as well, so she thought it might be nice to chat while enjoying our drinks. I said of course, I mean why not, sit, and rather aggressively pulled up a chair. I was very excited and nervous, but it seemed like she still hadn't realized I was a fan. I told her my name and she said hers, but I didn't say I already knew her because I wasn't sure about revealing that. At first I was a little awkward and talked about the weather, how nice the bar is and stuff. Then we talked for another hour or so. The conversation was going pretty well and thankfully I was much calmer at that point. Then I told her I was in the city for work, and talked about what I do very briefly. Very boring job. I felt like Jim Halpert in the first season of The Office while describing it. She said she was there for work as well, and said she makes music. At that point I thought I had to be honest. I said I know, I'm a huge fan actually, I love your every song, I have all your merch. Her expression quickly changed, from happy to disappointed, and she said oh. That was the moment I realized I messed up. Thinking about it now, maybe not telling that to her a little earlier was a bigger mess up. She said she doesn't think getting close with fans is appropriate. For a second I was going to say, so we were gonna get close? But, thank goodness I didn't. She briefly explained why she thought it's wrong, and all I could say was I respect that. And I really do. Even though it hurt, and I don't agree with it 100%, having a certain kind of power over people and choosing not to use that power for ethical reasons is quite respectable in my opinion. It got a little awkward again and we've only talked for a few more minutes. She said we could take a selfie if I want to, so we did. I offered her my number, and said maybe we could grab a coffee if she ever comes to my country. She accepted it, but probably out of politeness. Then I walked her to her car, and I'll probably never see her in person again outside of a concert. I can't stop thinking about how else that night could go, and I'll probably think about that for months to come, if not years. But what can you do? It is what it is. It's also weird that I went to a country I've never been before, decided to walk even though I usually don't, walked into a random bar, and met my biggest celebrity crush there. It's like the universe aligned everything for me and I managed to mess it up lol. My brother was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder at 16. He's never had empathy. Children learn empathy at some point, but it was like he never reached that developmental stage. He was unconcerned when people got hurt. He hit and bullied others in school to get what he wanted. Doctors, therapists, medication. Nothing made a difference, and it's not like there was some kind of trauma or a reason for his behavior. It's like he was just born wrong. When he was 10 he started taking and dealing drugs, since you can't be prosecuted under 14 in Germany. My parents called our version of CPS for help. He got more therapy, some inpatient stays and his own social worker. He stole my dad's car when he was 12 and got picked up by the cops. He got his first charges at 14, drugs and assault. My parents were at their wits' end and agreed to have him placed in a group home for troubled teens for a year. He was kicked out shortly before the year was up. He came home and seemed to recognize in a clinical, detached kind of way, that he couldn't go on like this without ending up in prison. He was about 15. He started being less violent, but he had insane delusions of grandeur and needed everyone to comply with whatever he wanted. If they didn't, he lashed out. My parents still made him go to therapy. He assaulted my dad and choked him because he didn't want to. My brother was 16, but also 6 feet 3 inches and about 190 pounds. My dad died from a sudden aneurysm when he was 16, and he went off the rails completely. He got a girl pregnant and she was kicked out by her mom. My mom took her in. The girl was not a bad person, just had some issues, so it wasn't that surprising that she'd date my brother. He beat her up at our house a couple months later while she was still pregnant. That was the last straw for my mom. She kicked my brother out. We helped the girl to find an apartment for her and the baby. Unsurprisingly, my mom caved a short while later and let my brother move back in. He seemed to think he was the head of the household. My parents never married, so my father's modest possessions went to me and my brother instead of my mom, and that included the car my dad bought a year before he died. It was the first brand new car he ever bought, a small one, but he was proud of it. My brother made my mom sell it so he could get his half of the money. It wasn't even a fucking expensive one, and my mom was devastated to lose my dead dad's little car. I was 20 then, my brother was 17. He was verbally abusive and basically tortured my mom mentally. He threatened to hit me on a daily basis whenever I didn't do something or give him something he wanted. He also threatened to kill me a couple of times. On a particular bad day he told my mom that he'd have no trouble to get a couple guys to run her off the road when she went out. When the threats got stale, he'd beat me up every couple weeks. There was one particular instance where I was actually afraid he was going to kill me. He did his usual spiel of using me as a verbal punching bag because he had had a bad day, and I was just burnt out. Didn't even react anymore. He hit me a couple of times and choked me. No idea how, but I fought him off, grabbed my phone and ran to the bathroom where I locked myself in before he could get to me again. He was trying to beat down the door while I called the cops. The cops did nothing. Told me he lived there, so we'd have to get along, and since we both said opposing things, nothing would come of it. I insisted they take my fucking statement. My mom wasn't home at the time, but she was a wreck anyway and couldn't deal anymore. A couple days later, my aunt came to visit for a couple of days. My brother was his charming, manipulative self for her. My aunt tried to pressure me into not pressing charges, since apparently I gave myself the dozens of bruises and contusions I had, as my brother had told her. I was severely suicidal at that point and gave my mom an ultimatum, me or him. She kicked him out again. He came back a year later, and I moved out for college immediately. I don't blame my mom much anymore, rock and a hard place and all that, but she never could understand the fact that her love for her son was misplaced. He didn't have the things that made someone human. He had no empathy, he was not capable of love, he was just an empty shell that went through life trying to get whatever pleasures he so desired by whatever means necessary. I haven't spoken to or seen him in about 7 years, but my mom's still in contact with him. He went to Spain when the mother of his daughter tried to get child support. Sometimes, my mom still talks about the things he's done. A couple examples: for some reason, his ex-girlfriend started letting him see his daughter, and she flies to Spain with my mom once or twice a year. Or used to, anyway. He locked her in the basement with an adult-sized portion of food she threw up on because she couldn't eat anymore. She was 4. She doesn't want to visit him anymore. He withheld rent from his Spanish landlord for like 6 months. The landlord had terminal cancer and my brother saw it as a waste to give money to a dying man. He married a girl in Spain and had another kid, and he now makes a living as a realtor. From what I've heard, he still thinks he's God's gift to mankind. I don't think I'd even go to his funeral if he died. What's the most embarrassing thing your partner has ever done in public? Have a long-standing habit of buying a lottery ticket for the Powerball whenever it gets over 300 million. It's overall a very small amount per year and it's just a small investment in fun times from my point of view. Recently the prize was slowly creeping up due to no winners multiple weeks in a row. It was over $1 billion last week and I bought a ticket like usual. But I got too busy to take it in to check the numbers. I decided to give the ticket to my wife to check. Now she is a sweet lady who has never gambled anything, so she was not familiar with the process. I sent her to a local supermarket with a machine, explained how to scan the card and sent her on her merry way. A little while later I got a strange text basically saying, "You better be sitting down," and then a text saying something to the effect of "I'm never coming back to this store again." Later I got the full story. She scanned the ticket correctly and the machine announced that she was a winner. A full screen graphic in giant words, "The works." She freaked out at the prospect of becoming billionaires, attracting attention in the store. She says she literally freaked out and started hyperventilating and collapsed to the floor, and started crying. After hyperventilating for a minute or two, she stopped crying, and she saw that the machine stated to proceed to a checkout counter. She walked over ready to become a billionaire and found out that she won $2. She was not aware that if you get one number in the right place you can win your money back. Anyways, after landing back on Earth abruptly she left the store mortified at her reaction to winning $2 and now we need to find somewhere else to shop. Have you ever suspected someone of being a serial killer without any evidence? What were they like? I used to work in low-income home weatherization, basically giving free stuff away to help lower electricity and gas bills and make the home more comfortable to people who really needed it. It involved installing doors and insulation and so forth. One step in qualifying a home is testing combustion appliances to make sure they're not emitting carbon monoxide into the living space, because if they are and we seal up the house we could kill the whole family. During a pre-inspection of a home on the outskirts of the city, I asked to see the owner's water heater. He tells me that it's in the basement, which is fairly normal, and I tell him I have to inspect it before work can start. He seems a bit uneasy, which I thought was strange. Anyways, he goes into the kitchen and starts moving the refrigerator. Turns out the entry into the basement is underneath carpeting beneath the fridge. I should note that I went and did thousands of homes over the years, and had never seen something like that. But, whatever, needs to be done regardless, so I pull out my flashlight and shine it down the stairs, to check out the layout but really to look for black widow spiders because I didn't want to get bit by one of those. At this point I notice a dead cat, mostly down to a skeleton. Not my favorite sight but really common in crawl spaces and basements. I take a few steps down the stairs and continue my spider check, and notice another couple of small animal skeletons. At this point I start to worry about gas, or poisons, or something equally dangerous, and start looking closer. There are animal skeletons everywhere, at least 10 on a cursory look. Some of them are so degraded I can't determine what they used to be. I couldn't even see the rest of the basement, this was just in the first 10 feet or so. I also happen to notice that this guy is waiting at the entrance a little too quietly, with his hand on the door. Something clicks in my brain and I get this immense sense of danger. I'm about 4 steps from the door being clear to close, I have no partner on the job with me, there's death all around me, and I realize just how hidden the entrance to the basement really was. I noped right out of there. I told the guy I needed extra tools and would be back, and marked the job as non-feasible for health and safety as I was driving away. The basement freaked me out so much that I filed a report with the police. They said they couldn't really search the home because I had no real evidence of wrongdoing, but that they would keep him in mind. A few months later, somehow they linked the guy to an entirely unrelated investigation. They actually referenced my report and made sure to check the hidden basement. They found the remains of about 4 missing people down there. My wife hates my female best friend. I have a friend called Sarah who I've known since childhood and has been there for me my whole life. I owe her my life and she's always been my go-to when I've problems. We slept once when we were in high school but that's all. My wife has never liked Sarah since I had her as best woman at my wedding. She calls her a pick-me. She went as far to suggest I cut her out of my life when she became pregnant with her first child but we worked through it in couples therapy. Their relationship got better when Sarah got married last year but unfortunately Sarah's husband just up and left a pregnant Sarah which has made her mental health spiral. Since Sarah has always been there for me I've stepped up for her by taking her to appointments, building the nursery and even promising to be with her when she gives birth. My wife has become extremely hostile to Sarah which has caused fights. To make up for not being there as much as I should I planned a special birthday for my wife. It was going to be a whole day and night being treated like a celebrity with a fancy hotel, dinner in an expensive restaurant, a shopping trip and a spa. Unfortunately, the same day Sarah went into labor 6 weeks early. She rang me in a bad state begging me to come to the hospital because she was scared. I told my wife everything and she started to freak out and saying it was her day, that Sarah wasn't going to ruin it. I told her to stop being childish. We can celebrate another time or she could ask a friend to go. Then she told me to not come home without a paternity test for Sarah's child. I'm currently with Sarah in the delivery ward. I've been getting so many angry calls and texts from both our families and friends. Unfortunately I tried getting in touch with my wife but I'm blocked on everything. Edit. Hi Warren, this is your wife Ella. First off, Sarah doesn't have a husband because she cheated on him and doesn't know who the dad is. Even your own parents think it is you. Sarah has no friends because she's rude to all the women in your life for no reason. She has slept with or flirted with multiple male members of your friend group. Your male friend group passes her around like a cigarette. I'm currently out at a nice restaurant with your mom and sister while your dad boxes up stuff to take to Sarah's. I want a divorce and Sarah to be finally out of my life.
How did your parents find out you smoke? I was about 16 and I was sneaking back up to bed after smoking all night when I got the munchies real bad. I took a detour to the kitchen and I started rifling around but I was too paranoid to turn on the lights so I really couldn't see poop. I got a craving for fruit so I went over to the fruit bowl and I saw the biggest orange I've ever seen. I'm talking massive. This thing was the size of a softball if not bigger, so I was all over it. I took it up to my room, again too afraid to turn on the lights, so I just started peeling it blindly. I was really struggling and I even remember stopping to giggle at how I was so stupidly high I couldn't even peel an orange. Fast forward a bit and I finally took the first hard-earned bite and it was just awful. Sour and bitter and everything bad all at once. You know that feeling when you bite into something and it's just not at all what you expected? It's a special kind of disappointment. Instead of just throwing it away and going to sleep, I fought on. I had to eat the orange. I was forcing down slice after slice, bite after bite, all the while shaming myself for not appreciating how delicious it truly was. I had convinced myself that there was nothing wrong with the orange, rather the problem was with me. My taste buds had been warped by years of exposure to processed sugar and corn syrup and other synthetic treats. How far had I drifted from what Mother Nature intended? Undoubtedly some of my ancestors went their entire lives without tasting something as delicious as an orange. This was a cathartic moment for me. I deserved this suffering. It was the first step on the road to recovery. Eventually I finished and passed out. First thing the next morning I saw my mom at the kitchen table and, still trying to convince myself, I said, "Mom, those oranges are so big, and so good. Where did you get them?" And she looked at me like I was stupid and said, "Sweetie, those are grapefruits."
What did the weird kid at your school do that nobody ever forgot? In 4th grade, a new girl came to my school. She always brought an egg salad sandwiches for lunch. Her parents loved egg salad and always had a bowl made in the fridge. So as a result, she got 2 to 3 sandwiches a week. People made fun of her the whole year about being a redhead and because she clashed with everyone she talked with. Whenever I spoke to her, she said she was better than me and would be rich and famous. I didn't really care. All I cared about was that she ate egg salad sandwiches, and it creeped me out. At the end of each year, the teacher would ask the students to help pack stuff up and clean. So I was assigned to clean up the closet. The closet was huge, maybe 7 feet wide and 15 feet long. It's where we hung up our book bags, had cubbies, and where the teacher would store boxes of materials and other stuff on the floor and the higher shelves. So I was cleaning out the closet, and since I was taller, I had to get the step stool that the teacher had so I could pull these boxes from the top shelf. So I hand the first few boxes down to the kids helping me. And they have some basic supplies in them, so they are pretty lightweight. Then I get to the end where these boxes are dusty because we never use them. I grab the first box, and it's heavier compared to the others, but again, there's nothing I couldn't handle. I grab the next box, and this one was heavier, but I got it down and passed it along. Then finally, I grabbed the last box, and this thing was unbelievably heavy. I drag the box off the shelf and try to grab it, but it's too heavy for my 4th grade hands, and I drop it. The box is now careening towards my classmate at full speed, hitting her in the face. She falls back, and then the horror unfolds. The contents of the box spilled out onto the closet floor, and I became horrified. Hundreds of plastic bags filled with moldy egg salad sandwiches fly out of the box across the closet floor. To make it worse, a few bags had popped open, and the most disgusting smell immediately filled the closet. The girl on the floor is now crying because she was hit in the head with the box, and another kid starts crying because it smells so bad. The other kid actually starts to gag because the smell is so bad. We were temporarily trapped in the room because there were both doors on each end. One was locked because there were kids on the other side taking supplies out of a door hanger thing, and my step stool was in the way of the door. We had to get out of. I climb down the ladder, push it through the door and run out of the room. I hear behind me the muffled cries of the girl and the other kids start to vomit in the closet. At this point the teacher comes to the closet, walks into the room and immediately back out. She takes a breath, grabs the girl with a bloody nose and the puke-covered boy out of the room and shuts the door. She turns around and asks what happened. I told her that these boxes were heavy and one fell open, but 2 others were on the floor in the room. My teacher put on a brave face and asked me to help get the other boxes out and we set off on our adventure. We unlocked the other door to the room with our faces covered and we each get one of the boxes, dragged them out of the room and shut the door behind us. We put the boxes on a table and we opened up one of the boxes. She immediately closes it and starts to gag herself. She opens up the other box and reaches him. What she pulls out is a brand new, completely fresh egg salad sandwich. I quickly realized that every single one of these boxes was full of moldy sandwiches. I look over at the weird girl and with my tiny finger pointing at her I say she is the only one who eats egg salad sandwiches. Everyone looks over at the girl, and she starts to cry and then screams out, "I don't even like egg salad sandwiches." Then she runs out of the room. So what had happened was that she really did not like egg salad sandwiches. And instead of telling her parents, she took the sandwiches and hid them in the closet instead of throwing them out. I don't know why you would do that, but whatever. The only problem is that she can't reach the top shelf without the step stool. And that step stool was locked in a separate janitor's closet, and it was so we couldn't use it and hurt ourselves during the year. So she actually had to climb up the other shelves on the wall and sneak in the egg salad sandwiches every single time she had one. We never saw her again after that. And she was so embarrassed by the situation, she had to move schools twice the following year. Am I the a-hole for ruining the lives of the people who scammed my grandma and then sending out bomb threats from the scammers' computers? She has been extremely depressed since my grandfather died, so I have been taking care of her. She was telling me about how her friend from the UK was going to send her $10 million since she won the lottery. She only had to pay the shipping fees of $10,000. Those $10,000 were some of the last money she had left in her bank account and I was significantly worried for her. The asshole scammers. After hearing about the lottery I took a look at her computer and checked her emails. She was indeed being scammed by some guy named Lawrence Buckingham who said she had won the lottery. It turned out that she had already paid him the $10K, and I was pretty pissed off and so I removed the battery from her computer so that she would not be able to use it to respond further. I told her after taking the battery out that her computer was not working and that I would take it home to repair it. I work with computers a lot, so this was believable and she was alright with it. I then began replying to the scammers on a PC I had just constructed for my mission. I told them that I had not received the money and then asked if I should pay them more. Since I had locked her old credit card now that they had the info, I created a new fake credit card that I photoshopped and made a file that had all of her now false information that was on the new card. I embedded some stuff in the file so that when they downloaded it, it would infect their computer quite harshly. They fell for it and downloaded the file, only to have their computers bricked and ransomware all over it. I even used a good old Hydra virus in case they paid the ransomware since I was feeling nostalgic. After hijacking their computer, they for some reason paid the $10K, which I returned to my grandmother's bank account and then sent out a bomb threat from their computer once I made sure that it was traceable back to them. A few days went by and I saw on our local news that there was a bomb threat and that 3 suspects had been arrested. It turned out that the scammers were actually living a few streets away from my grandmother's house and that they were also being arrested for possession of marijuana and one was charged with underage drinking. Funnily enough, their ages counted up. 20, 21, and one was 22. Am I the a-hole for potentially ruining their lives? What did you hear a foster kid say that broke your heart? Every single one of them had a story even if they didn't realize they were revealing things. One 7-year-old, skinny child had a large bag from her former foster home of women's clothing with safety pins to make them fit, if you could even call that fitting. It took me 6 months of making fancy custom-made clothing where she participated in choosing fabric, buttons, lace, etc. before she was willing to let go of the inappropriate articles she came with. Another girl asked me why her mother chose the roping boyfriend over her own daughter. A sweet gay teen asked me if he was allowed to attend church with us as he'd been beaten and told he was evil. A girl picked up for prostitution told me that the group she'd been with took care of her. She actually thought they were better than how her family treated her. It was hard to say to her that she'd been used, not taken care of. When I stopped at a drugstore after picking up a teen boy, he asked why I stopped. I said that there must be things he needed like combs, razors and toiletries. He got quiet and said, "You mean if I need something, I get it?" He was forever in awe about being treated respectfully. He was a gem of a kid. A girl cried when taken to have a shampoo and style. She couldn't imagine being treated well. Then when she was finished and in a new dress, we had her photo taken. She had no idea how lovely she was. None of them had ever given even small dignities. How sad is that? The saddest of them thought what they had was normal and the adults worked to convince them of that. When they realized it wasn't normal is when the grieving began.
The guy that I'm seeing has a micro PP as well as erectile dysfunction. It is 2.5 inches y'all when stiffer than a statue, maybe an inch at most when soft. So I just started dating this lovely, wonderful man who is so kind, gentle and loving. He makes me feel unlike anyone I've dated before and I have really started falling for him. We've been on several dates and he has slept over my place a couple times. The first time he slept over, he gave me brain and it was mind-blowingly amazing. I didn't finish, but enjoyed it all thoroughly nonetheless. The second time I got to see him unclothed and I was honestly shocked at how small his mighty sword was. I hate myself for feeling so shocked about it honestly. On our first date he lightheartedly and jokingly said he had a micro PP and I was entirely convinced he was joking. But I found out on the second sleepover date that he was, in fact, not lying. He also had told me that the only way for him to get or maintain a stiffy was by using supplements. This didn't really faze me at the time. When I initially saw it, I didn't react or anything. I just kissed and loved on him as much as I could, reassuring him that I wasn't worried and it was okay. I tried to give him brain but it felt wrong. I felt like there was nothing there. I may as well have been blowing the air. I felt so guilty that he had performed such unbelievable brain on me the previous date and my, usually really good, performance felt so horrible. At least to me. He said it felt good, but he just had no real reaction and I felt like a fish out of water. When he did not, I barely felt anything. The load matched the size of his member. Does anyone have any advice on how I can make this relationship work out so that it is pleasurable and satisfying for the both of us? He is literally so perfect in so many ways and I really would love to have this relationship last. I never want to make him feel bad about these things, and I don't want to be disrespectful to him, but it's really hard to be satisfied when someone is stiff in you and you don't feel it at all. Thank you for watching.
I'm considering leaving my wife because of her weight. Alright, before I get called an asshole, let me explain. I love my wife. I think she's incredibly beautiful and even more so after she gave birth to our son 3 years ago. The problem is that she put on a good amount of baby weight, obviously, and never lost it. She instead started to gain more weight and was overall pretty depressed. I initially assumed it was PPD and suggested she go to therapy for it. She went to therapy and got some antidepressants. It took her a while to find the right ones, and she's been fine mentally since she found them. Physically is a different story, however. She has continued over the past 3 years to gain weight. The problem isn't anymore that I'm not attracted to her, but she will die if she continues to gain weight. She is currently 5'2", about 260 pounds with a BMI close to 50. I don't know what I can do. I feel like I've tried everything. I've asked her to go to the gym with me, go on a diet with me, not buy fast food, have some active hobbies. She's turned down every single one of these ideas. I feel like I don't have any choice but to give her an ultimatum. Either she genuinely tries to lose the weight or I leave. I can't watch the woman I love and mother of my child slowly kill herself. I don't want to be the dude who gives an ultimatum, but I see no other choice. I guess I just wanted to ask if I'm being an asshole or if Therese any other way I could go about this. 5 months later. So I made a post about 5 months ago because I was getting past the point of no return with my wife's weight. Now expectedly I got called in a hole and a meathead and every other name under the book for even mentioning it. But I also got some real good feedback and decided before I made any real decision I would sit her down and let her know how I was truly feeling. Because at that point we had multiple conversations addressing it, but none of them lead anywhere. So after we put my son to sleep I asked my wife if we could talk for a moment in the kitchen. Now I'm not gonna lie, the conversation was probably the hardest one I've ever had. Because despite what everyone believed, I do love my wife. Now I don't want to get into every detail, but the basis of the conversation was that I needed her to at least try and be healthier. I also think she needed to hear how serious I was about this, and when I told her I was even thinking about separating, I think it really put the nail in the coffin. It's been about 5 months since then and I'm proud to say my wife has lost 35 effing pounds. I am so proud of her, it's effing ridiculous. The first month was a effing hurdle and a half, but now she's going steady and losing weight at a healthy moderate rate. Recently she even started to exercise with me. In the morning I usually jog, but since her knees are somewhat shot, 3 days a week we go walk a mile or two, together and either talk or just listen to music together. I know it sounds corny to say, but she even seems happier and her confidence is coming back as well. I was told that I gave my daughter a really stupid name. My boyfriend cheated on me, so I convinced him to get matching tattoos. I left the parlor after he got it first. This happened 5 years ago when I was 19. He was 22 and the second boyfriend I've ever had. I was head over heels in love with him. But looking back, he was just a good pickup artist and knew how to push my buttons. Especially considering he was older and a lot more experienced than me. We have been together for almost a year when a random girl from our university DM'd me one day. "You don't know me, and I am sorry to tell you this, but I've been sleeping with your boyfriend for 5 months now. He always told me he was single, but I recently got suspicious and went through his phone. I'm paraphrasing, but you get the point. I was completely heartbroken and felt like such an idiot. Now it all made sense why he was super busy half the time and could not see me. What I was more upset about was the fact that he blatantly lied to me throughout the relationship, swearing that he was monogamous and expected the same for me. And I was. After my emotions had more or less settled after a couple of days, I invited that girl, let's call her Caitlin, to a coffee shop. She agreed to meet and tell me everything she knows. Long story short, Caitlin saw on his phone that he was dirty texting many girls, and from quickly scrolling through most of the chats, it was clear that he was screwing at least 4, me included. Caitlin said that she and the other 2 girls were just friends with benefits, but he did not mention at least to her that he has a girlfriend and he is cheating. Caitlin did not care about the other girls, they were treated the same way, just as friends with benefits. But I was in a serious relationship with him and had no idea what was happening. After discovering this, I got extremely angry. I felt so played and manipulated. The grown-up thing to do would have been to confront him, tell him he's a jerk, and just leave. But I was 19 and could not just leave it like that. I wanted to mess with his mind too. I'm not the one who came up with a matching tattoo idea. It was my best friend. After I shared this story and told her, I'm pissed off and want revenge. He already had plenty of tattoos, so getting another one would not be too crazy. So, I thought I might actually pull this off. The next time I saw my boyfriend, I pretended nothing had happened and acted as if I was in love with him even more. I started dropping seeds in his mind, mentioning that I was thinking about getting my first tattoo, maybe even his name, etc. Which he loved, by the way. His ego was getting more than he could handle. Long story short, in about 2 weeks, we went to a tattoo parlor. My best friend secretly waited nearby in her car, and I told her to pick me up as soon as she saw me step outside of the shop. My plan was this. Go there, act a bit scared, and do a good old switcheroo. Play with his ego to put him on the spot. I framed it something along the lines of, I really want to do it, but I'm a scared little girl. Oh, my gosh, we're actually doing this. Is it going to hurt? I need a big, strong man to show me first, etc. And guess what? It worked like a charm. Did not take too long for him to go first and get my name tattooed on the side of his ribs with a big, strong, cool guy smirk on his face. As soon as the tattoo was finished, I just casually left the parlor, saying, I know you've been cheating on me. Dumb. He was about to run after me, but the tattoo artist stopped him because he needed to pay. The timing was just perfect. My friend parks in front of the shop, I jump in the car, and as we leave, my boyfriend runs out and sees us driving off with my middle finger in the car window. I blocked him. Gave him zero closure. Ignored all of his attempts to reach out. Was this too ruthless? Maybe childish? He probably got the tattoo covered with something else as soon as possible, but just knowing that I made him do that made me feel warm and fuzzy.
What's the most horrific thing your parents have ever done to you? I found out exactly how much my mother valued me and my siblings. In the early part of 1999, my older sister and I were playing in front of our grandparents' house. I was 9 years old and my sister was 13. I think we were rollerblading up and down the driveway, having fun outside. In the midst of innocent play, we needed to get something from the back of my grandma's vehicle. I don't remember what it was we were getting, but I do remember what we found. I wish we never found it. We found a journal and it was in my grandma's handwriting. Intrigued, we began reading what appeared to be notes. Notes about my mother, her behavior, and her lack of parenting abilities. During this year, my grandparents had taken myself and my 2 siblings into their home. They had both just retired and they did this not just out of love and selflessness, but out of necessity. My mother had been extremely neglectful of us. She was literally not feeding us, we were unbathed, our heads were infested with head lice, we rarely went to school, and we had no clothes or even a bed. Her boyfriend was abusive to us in many ways as well. This all happened while my father was incarcerated. So, back to that journal. In the journal, my grandma had been taking notes of how my mom would be late for visitation, how she wouldn't show up sometimes, or how she was just not even attempting to be motherly. It was very thorough and even time-stamped. Basically, my grandma logged all interactions with my mom. And I'm guessing she was doing this for the court because they were trying to get custody of us. But, the one thing that I remember reading was how my mom called my grandma one afternoon and offered to sell all 3 of us to them. Yep. She said she wouldn't fight for us in the courts, if my grandma gave her $200 for us. And they could have us. That's about $66 and some change for us each. Pretty good deal, right? We stopped reading the journal after seeing that. But, it always stuck with me. I never asked my grandma about it. I never asked my mom about it either. I'm sure they didn't accept her offer and simply shared this information about her with the judge in the custody case. They did get custody over all 3 of us. We had a wonderful life with my grandparents. We really did. I owe everything I am to them. And I have always known my mom wasn't exactly ever going to be motherly. I've accepted that. But, I still wish I had never read what I read that day. My mom basically attempted to sell us. And not even for a lot of money. I could have gone my whole life without knowing that.
How did you embarrass yourself in bed? I had a dream, word to Martin Luther King, that I was at a special preview of a big new water theme park with the 2 guys of Throttle House. The park's claim to fame was a giant water slide, A company spokesperson was showing us through the facility and invited us to try the slide and give our thoughts at the end for any improvements that could be made. She offered us each a cute cartoon-styled Loch Ness Monster floaty to use on the slide, but I was convinced by Thomas Jefferson and James to try the slide without any. They wanted to see how much speed I could get going down. Well, at some point I had to go to the restroom to pee. The restrooms weren't entirely finished, as they hadn't put in dividers between urinals yet. I walk in and find an oddly alone young boy who is dancing in place, clearly needing to pee and clearly struggling with his swim trunk drawstring. I didn't see any parents around and wondered if I'd go to prison for helping a helpless kid untie his shorts. During this internal debate, I happily let my golden shower commence into the urinal. Eventually the kid gave up on the drawstring and, I guess he must have just pulled his pee out the top of the waistband without untying. As a result he couldn't control where his stream was going and he ended up peeing into my urinal instead of his. And that's when I felt it. The side of my hip was wet. Immediately sprang out of bed in absolute horror and shock. I haven't peed the bed since I was like 4 years old, 25 years ago. The worst part is that I am sleeping with my girlfriend. She woke up from my violent awakening and I had to tell her in no uncertain words what I had done, as she looked at her side, and realized it too, was covered in my pee. What's the most obnoxious America-centric behavior you've ever witnessed? I'm currently on a coach tour around Europe with 43 other travelers. There are 4 Americans including me and my wife, while the rest are from all around the world. My wife, the man from North Carolina, and I are conscious of the stereotypes associated with ugly Americans. We are committed to avoiding any behavior that perpetuates such stereotypes. Right from the start of the tour, when our group met in Paris for a meet and greet, the other American woman stood out as loud and opinionated. Within 5 minutes of arriving, she loudly told the waiters off for quietly talking to each other in French, saying we are all Americans here. She then complained that the foods had the French name on them above the English name, asking if any other foods on the trip could have the American names on them only. She also corrected the other English-speaking nationalities and their particular names for foods. The Brits had fun with this, regularly asking each other if they wanted chips, to which she would loudly correct them, "You mean fries?" Not that they actually ate any fries. Once on the road, we had a different guide in most countries so each was unaware of this woman's demands. As soon as a guide mentioned any distance in kilometers, she would call out loudly, "Hey, Miles, remember, we are Americans." Remember, we were 4 Americans among 43 other non-Americans. The Dutch guide would always respond with a random, very inaccurate number. Whenever the guide called out any prices in euro or krona, she would loudly ask, "What is that in dollars?" Once again the Dutch guide would always respond in an apparently random, inaccurate, number. After 2 days of this, she loudly confronted the guide having worked out one of his answers was wrong. He pointed out that, no, his calculation was correct. In New Zealand dollars. Whenever we went into any shops, hotels, markets, and so on, she continued loudly with the "what's that in dollars?" theme. She regularly broke the rule about not talking about politics when overseas. I am a mild Democrat, but not rabidly so, while she is extremely pro-Trump. I respect that and don't mind her having her opinions, but not when she constantly and loudly talks about US politics on the bus. The Brits have only just re-elected Boris Johnson as Prime Minister and she is regularly asking stupid questions about whether he is Republican or Democrat. Why don't Brits have Republican or Democrat like everyone else? She mentions to others that the modern terminology is not Prime Minister, that went away long ago. They are now called presidents. This was to a table of Brits, Australians, and Kiwis, who all have Prime Ministers. She always seems to find some poor unfortunate soul to torture with the diatribe of her life back in Texas, about how they do this and that differently, how it is always bigger and better in Texas. She never once asks the other travelers about where they are from or listens to any of their experiences. I am very pleased to see the other nationalities try to rescue my wife and me, or the gent from North Carolina when she corners us for a one-way conversation. It is actually becoming a bit of fun watching 2 of the New Zealand and British couples having fun baiting her or taking the piss out of her. I am inwardly proud that my fellow travelers don't think of my wife and me as being part of her group just because we come from the same state. Just when I thought she had calmed down, the beast went at it again, giving us Americans a bad name. We had just boarded a new bus in Norway which had a digital temperature readout so passengers could see the outside temperatures in degrees Celsius. Which, by the way, is used in pretty much all countries outside of the USA. I heard a few passengers groan out loud as her voice pierced the quiet serenity with, "Sir, sir, sir, can you please change the clock to real degrees so we know what temperature it is?" The new guide was a little perplexed about what she meant by the clock. He looked at the digital readout and said it appears to be reading correctly, to which she replied, "But it is in those other degrees. Can you turn it back to real degrees? We're Americans." Well, 4 of the 43 were. Group dynamics are a funny thing. 2 weeks ago everyone would have just rolled their eyes and let her have her way. This time, though, a dozen other passengers, I included, called out in unison no. To which some otherwise polite Canadians and Brits added, "Fuck off back to Texas." A sentiment I completely agreed with.
Here are the do's and don't of glow-up tricks I wish I knew sooner. I did a mix of running, yoga, and lifting every week to get my weight down and gain some muscle. Along with lots of walking, I was able to get my BMI down to 19, which was a huge improvement for my body type. I'm really boxy and not curvy at all, so those particular exercises made my body more flattering. I have a deviated septum and some damage from a break, so I got a nose job, specifically rhinoplasty. This was more of a health issue on my part, but fixing these made a huge difference on my face. My nose was very big for my face and typically the first thing you'd notice, so making it a bit smaller brought out my other features. I've been getting lots of compliments on my eyes and lips that I never got before, even though I didn't do anything differently to them. My face in general just looks more proportioned. Fixing your appearance goes beyond your facial structure, so I also focused on my nails and hair. I bought a gel nail starter kit and some polish to fix up my nails right at home. It's way easier than I thought and looks almost the same as salon quality. Taking care of your nails can make your fingers look more elegant and even slimmer. I'm still learning techniques, but doing nails at home is way cheaper and easier to maintain/touch up. As for my hair, I've started a routine that consists of using Redken acidic bonded shampoo and conditioner. This also works perfectly for dyed and damaged hair. I damaged my hair from bleaching, dyeing, and putting too much heat, and that has helped me more than I expected. I also stopped brushing my hair after the shower, which has reduced breakage a ton since hair is super fragile after washing. It's very vulnerable, which causes it to break easier when wet. For my girls who love a good fake tan, use Saint Tropez body tanning mousse and face tanning mist. I get so pale in the winter and it's something I was insecure about, but the mousse and mist make the tan look so natural that no one will even suspect it's a fake tan. To keep that illusion of it being my real skin tone, I got color match help from Sephora. The makeup specialists helped me match a foundation, bronzer, and blush to my skin tone, and they look so much better and more natural than what I'd chosen before. I've also improved my teeth by using teeth whitening and Invisalign. I've been using 3D white strips and the Invisalign makes my teeth look a lot straighter. What didn't work was a lash lift home kit. I was impressed at how easy it was to use a gel kit right at home that I thought I would save the cost of my lash lifts by doing that all by myself, but I almost blinded myself. I'll leave that to the professionals. This could work for some people, but it was really scary and painful for me, so I won't be trying that again. And please listen to hairstylists when they say don't use box dye. This completely destroyed my hair. It didn't help that I used black box dyed. It dried out my hair, came out all blotchy, and the chemicals are just horrible to put in your hair. I definitely wouldn't recommend this to anyone. I'm still working to fix the damage. Surprisingly, cutting out sugar didn't work. I hear this a lot because not eating sugar helps clear the skin and is just healthier to not eat sugar, but it ended up making me miserable. Maybe I just have a sweet tooth, so I wouldn't tell another person with a sweet tooth to stop eating sugar. I think my mom is trying to poison and unalive me. I think I'm going insane, but recently I have genuinely started fearing for my life. I've never had a good relationship with my parents, but it got particularly bad when I started puberty. My mental health started to worsen rapidly, leading me to get hospitalized multiple times after 4 failed suicide attempts. When I was 14, I pleaded to get taken out of my parents' home because I simply couldn't take any of it anymore. I was placed into a group home for young girls and started to get way better when I was there. Even though I never felt wanted or welcomed at home, my mom always demanded I move back home, but I never agreed. She always tried to influence me as much as possible, and I only kept in contact with her because I didn't want to lose my siblings. Fast forward to this year. Child services can't take care of me anymore because I'm legally an adult now and I lost my job, so I had nowhere to go. I'm just not able to fully stand on my own 2 feet yet, partly because of my mental illness, BPD and CPTSD. So I had no choice but to move back in with my mom, as she had divorced my dad because he got exposed for roping a girl, 11 yo. When I first moved back home, everything went surprisingly well at first. My mom acted very nice towards me, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling that it was all fake. It just didn't seem genuinely authentic. A few weeks after I first moved in, she told me about some new herbal supplements she was taking and about their great effects. She seemed very enthusiastic about it and I didn't think anything bad of it, so I agreed when she asked me to take them. They had a weird, unfamiliar taste to them, but she explained it being just the very strong herbal essences. Not long after I started taking these meds, I began to feel weird. I just felt strangely sick all day and could barely eat or drink without gagging. Also, my stomach started to hurt really bad and I got diarrhea, so I thought it was abdominal influenza. I wanted to go to the doctor about it, but my mom made me stay at home, demanding she'd take care of me. Honestly, I was quite happy because she used to never care for me when I was sick and it felt like a genuine act of love. She gave me more of her supplements to treat my stomach problems, but it really didn't help and I continued feeling worse and I even started to throw up blood. Not too much, but still. I started to get the feeling that something was up with her supplements, since it all started once I began using them. When I confronted my mom about it, she got really mad at me for not trusting her and made me feel guilty as hell. Still, I decided to secretly stop using them by spitting them out when she wasn't looking at me anymore. A while after that I began to feel better again, and she for some reason didn't seem happy about it. Now that's the current situation I'm in. I suspect that she might be poisoning me. Here's more reason why. A few years ago there was an incident where she made me, my sister and my dad drink diluted chlorine. She gave us this drink, also claiming it was some kind of health supplement. It made our throats sore and caused extreme sickness and stomach aches. It also led to my sister's hospitalization because she was so sick and dehydrated. When my dad confronted her and demanded to know what it was, she finally admitted to feeding us chlorine because she'd heard it was healthy in very small diluted doses. He didn't report her and my sister luckily didn't suffer any long-term consequences. Since then my dad still doesn't want her to give us strength supplements, but he ended up believing her excuse. But still her true motive could have been anything. She told a few family members on different occasions that she wouldn't mind my death. That she was just sick of me and all the crap I made the family go through. If she didn't mind my death, maybe she'd even take it a step further and help the cause. Also, she found me twice after a suicide attempt, and both times she didn't try to save me, she just left me. If it wasn't for someone else to save me, I'd be long gone now. She's really invested in me taking those supplements. She always makes sure I take them in front of her eyes. That's despite the fact that she never really cared about my health in the past. Also again, she seems to be upset about me getting better. I don't know what to make of all that. I really don't want to believe that my own mother could try to get rid of me, but at the same time I don't know what this woman is capable of.